And so he's about 35, maybe 37, and he's about to go into the woods. And all I know at this point is this is the biggest deer I've ever seen and may ever see again. And so I'm like, well, we're gonna throw an arrow at it and see what happens. I let the arrow fly and I felt amazing about the shot. Like I thought this thing was dead for sure. And that was the outcome. Now we didn't know this.
Not dead, just in case anybody was wondering.
Yeah. So October 28th did not kill the deer. Like I had seen so many pictures of him, and I had seen all these little kickers in every direction. I was just like, it didn't really feel real until I had walked up on him and I grabbed his antlers and I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
All right, so we got a few hours to kill before the next podcast. And hold on. This is what I find right here.
Hey. What's up?
Oh, hold on. There we go. Now I can see you.
Thanks. Are you surprised?
I mean, maybe some sheets. I mean,
Buddy, we're all about relating to the common folk. This is how the common folk do it.
in a Texas Roadhouse parking lot, huh?
This is when you need a nap, you need a nap.
Yeah. Well,
Here I am.
We'll give them a little tour of yours. Go ahead and give them a house tour real quick, and then I'll give them a tour of mine.
Okay, sleeping bag, negative 20 degrees, amazing. 4-inch memory foam. I'm sleeping on part of a ghillie suit for a pillow. And then I've got a bag of deer corn and some boots. So, you know, I keep it simple, stupid. It's comfortable. It's cozy.
All right.
All right, see you later.
All right, guys. Well, you've seen Christian's setup back there. Yeah, we're just in the back of a Texas Roadhouse parking lot. Luckily, it's kind of raining cats and dogs right now, so it's pretty good cover. Hopefully people won't see us from the outside camping back here, because I don't know if they'd kick us out or not. But either way, we got some time to kill before our next podcast with Jake Schumann, so we're going to try to take a nap, because it's going to be a long day. Because we just got done filming with Chad, and we're going to be meeting up with Jake Schumann at 8 o'clock tonight, and then we're going to have another few hour drive to a public spot we're going to scout in the morning, and then that should wrap up the North Texas podcast tour. But it's been a good trip so far. Charlie, Chad, both great guys, and I want to give you a little rundown of my little camping situation. So obviously I'm in the back of my wife's Chevy Blazer, and all I did is I just kind of laid the seats down using my bag with all my clothes in it, a little extra head support and pillow, and I'm kind of halfway laying on the blanket / wrapping up in the blanket, and yeah, just gonna make do. Good enough for a 45-minute nap here at Texas Roadhouse, and it'll do me just fine. I'll probably kick that stuff up in the front seat tonight when we get to our public spot, lay diagonal. Maybe that'll give me a little bit of extra room to stretch out fully, but regardless, it'll be just fine. That's the game plan, and I'm gonna try to get a few minutes sleep in between and pick y'all back up whenever we're headed to Jake.
Welcome to the Hunter's Advantage podcast, where a group of budget-minded hunters scour the woods for whitetail bucks and whatever other big game is in season. Tune in each week to hear the hilarious public and private land hunting stories and mistake-filled lessons learned. We believe that every hunt brings us closer to God, and that we exist to share the good news. And now, your hosts, Christian Babcock and Jake Gaylord.
Listen, guys, we wouldn't be able to do the podcast if it wasn't for you all. So we just want to say that you guys are greatly appreciated, and thank you for following along each week.
And speaking of support, we are partnered with Out on a Limb Manufacturing, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, Matt and Chase are great, down-to-earth guys, and they make some of the best saddle hunting products out there. Whether you're looking for a set of climbing sticks or a mobile, lightweight, hang-on tree stand, or maybe you're even a one-sticker.
You mean tree Pilates?
Yes, tree Pilates. If you've been to the grocery store or the gas station lately, you know that Uncle Joe is doing his absolute worst to take all your money. That's why we need hunting gear that lasts year after year. And trust me, I've been rocking the same Out on a Limb Shakar climbing sticks for 4 years and the Ridge Runner 2.0 saddle hunting platform for a few years as well. This gear is built to last.
We can confidently say that Out on a Limb is the best bang for your buck.
And it's the best gear if you want to deflate a big old buck.
Ooh. Make sure you use code HNTA15 at outonalimbmfg.com for 15% off anything on their website.
So if you can show them the same support that you guys show us, please go to outonalimbmfg.com and use code HNTA15 for 15% off at checkout. Now let's get back to the podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hunter's Advantage podcast. This is actually stop number 3 for us on our North Texas podcast tour, so we're happy to be wrapping up the show with you guys. We got Jake and Micah on the program today. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, appreciate you having us.
Welcome to North Texas.
Thank you. Yeah, if I can shoot a buck like that one, I'll be really happy about North Texas. So, anyways, let's start.
First
here.
of all,
what?
Thank you for inviting us into your home.
Oh, yeah,
letting us
thank you.
intrude.
Yeah.
Beautiful home.
Y'all got it set up well.
Yeah, we got like the News on 6 set up in your home.
I know.
Studio.
Blinded.
Looks good.
Yeah, I love it. Cool. So let's start here. We've had Jake. Have you been on the podcast before? Have we talked?
I don't think so.
I felt like we had you on at some point. Like we didn't do a podcast attack when we were together last time. So
No, just
Okay.
get your butts in a couple videos.
yeah, yeah, that was true and frustrating. I'll never play a game like that again. I actually have Josh Bomar training me for this tax season, so
Teaching you how to burn your truck.
and shoot 200-inch bucks. Yeah, exactly. Let's start here. So for you two, since our audience isn't familiar with you guys, give us a little bit of a background into kind of how you guys got into hunting and how you got started. I know we just talked about it on the preamble before the podcast, but what's y'all's hunting origins? How did you guys get started?
You're up.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I started hunting around 7 years old. It was just kind of something that, we did in our family. My grandpa did, my dad did. And my number was pulled at 7. My grandpa was like, all right, come on, let's go. So went to Mason County, Texas with my grandfather, and I wasn't even strong enough to hold up the gun. It was a lever action 30-30.
Well, you're still not, but
That's why I bow hunt, dude. That's why I switched to bow hunting. But wasn't strong enough to hold up the gun, so we had to duct tape it to a camera tripod. And, and so that weekend I killed 2 deer and have pretty much killed, I don't know, anywhere from 2 to 4 deer every year since I was 6, or 6 or 7, somewhere around there. But, then transitioned over to bow hunting around the time I was, 21, 22. It's kind of the regular phase of a deer hunter. You rifle hunt enough to where you're like, it's fun and it's a challenge, but I would like to add a new, element to it, make it maybe a little bit more rewarding. And so started bow hunting and have been doing that since. And I haven't touched a gun to deer hunt in probably, 3 years or so. So, yeah, it's been really enjoyable.
heck yeah. Jake, what about you?
Similar. We've known each other since we were probably 5, and our families were very aligned in terms of how we grew up and what we enjoyed doing. But
Both 2 loving liberal families.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Biden 2024.
Stupid. Well, I think the first time I was tiny when I first started shooting guns, but nobody in my family bow hunted. But we were East Texas. We had a couple leases out there growing up. We had a little bit of private that we would hunt on in East Texas, and then we started hunting in Central Texas a little bit too. One of my favorite places ever was like the Eastland area. I don't know if you guys, Ranger, Cisco, Eastland. It's a little like a really nice little pocket right there in the middle of the state, and we loved it down there. And unfortunately, once a landowner gets wind of what's, happening on his property, he's like, oh, well, knock it up $1,000, $2,000 on these guys. And so it just kept slowly climbing for us. And I remember in high school having that like dilemma where it's like, okay, it's football season. We're already only going down there once or twice a year anyway. Can we justify this anymore? And I think that my folks just had to make the tough decision where it's like, hey, we're not using this enough, and it's going to be another $2,000, gun. So we stopped in the lease stuff. And then the coolest thing that I think kind of shifted me from just like somebody that goes out and sits in a deer stand and hunts to more of loving the land management side and loving just like the design side and the strategy side of hunting is I don't know if we remembered or what, but my dad, his family, many generations ago, they came over from Germany, ported in Galveston, and then drove up to just east of Austin. And it's about an hour, and they had an old farm down there. And my dad grew up going there. He grew up in Houston area and then moved up to East Texas in his teenage years. But we hadn't been in like 10, 15 years, and it had just been like untouched. And so I was like, well, that's our ground. We can go down there and, do whatever. And it was a mess. I don't think we had any deer. There really wasn't a lot of like management going on down there anyway. It was out in the middle of nowhere. And so that's where I started just like cutting my teeth and trying to figure out how to hunt again. And so I think I started there when I was like 17, and that's where I hunted throughout undergrad and through my next phase in school and all that stuff. So that's really where I learned again. I was like, okay, so this isn't as simple as, throw some corn out and go stand over it. It's like I started learning how we could use like river systems and bedding areas a little bit more strategically. And that's where I like fell in love again, because I was like, this is really, really, really fun. And then I guess 3 or 4 years ago, you really were one of the first people that got me into bow hunting. And going up to some public land in Oklahoma. That was probably only my second time bow hunting, and
almost killed an elk.
We almost we saw
an elk.
It was 98 degrees opening weekend. It was so hot, just hiking into the mountains pretty much every single morning and throwing a stand up and hoping for the best. And I don't think I saw a single deer that whole 4 days.
Deer that day,
but I did see 2 elk, which that was kind of cool. But biggest deer of my life, about 300 yards away, and then I was like, oh darn, they exist here. But that was really my first exposure to bow hunting, and it was very frustrating in the beginning. Like no doubt about it, very, very frustrating.
Still frustrating.
Very frustrating still to date. But I think it's just the rush, it's the sport to it, it's the strategy to it. So I love it now.
When it's rewarding, you know what I mean? Like and there's nothing against gun hunting, but I don't have the same feeling when walking up on a deer that I did when I shot it with a rifle. Like when I kill it with a doe, it's just like, or kill it with a bow, like when you walk up on it, it's like this overwhelming sense of gratitude and, honestly, like a little bit of relief too.
Total relief.
Because,
shocking, I hit it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just like a completely different feeling that you get with a rifle. It's like with a rifle, you could have not shot that gun for 10 years, pick it up and kill a deer tomorrow. With a bow, if you do that, you're not going to even hit it, right?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah, probably not.
That moment, or that I guess phase in time though, where it's like you let an arrow go until you see it on the ground and you're walking up to it, is the worst though. I hate that time.
Least favorite.
If you don't have the arrow, like if I have the arrow and it looks good, then I mean me, I'm like, that deer's dead, deer's dead. Like,
kill him with confidence at least.
It's like, yeah, absolutely. It's like, I don't even know where we're sitting here. Let's just go get this deer. But if I don't have the arrow, then it's like this sense of dread. Like, why do I even do this? But
it's the build up.
Yeah.
It's the build up.
So you guys, you said you hunted in Central Texas. Did you hunt any East Texas at all?
A lot growing up. Yeah, really? A lot in like Crockett area, and I don't know if y'all are familiar, but
I heard they shoot at sound in the Crockett area.
We had some dangerous encounters. I won't tell too many of those stories. We would be We need to get maybe our dads and grandpas in here at some point and let them tell the stories, because let's be honest, it's all like, you know, secondhand at this point. But man, those are the guys that have the real stories. But yeah, it was that's a tough place to hunt.
I've heard. My buddy Hunter Williamson was telling me, he's telling a secondhand story that his dad was telling him. He said he was in South Dakota, and at like 9 a.m. a guy was walking back to the parking lot, and he said, "Yeah, can I borrow a couple bullets off you?" And he said, "Why, you lost your bullets?" He said, "No, I already went through a box." and he was like, "What are you shooting, 30-06?" And he said he gave the guy 4 or 5 bullets and was on his way. I was like, he shot a box? I don't know how he went home and was like, at least I tried today.
You know? Are they doing like deer drives and stuff?
No, he was just walking around shooting a deer. He shot a whole box.
Oh my God.
Some people are different. We've had several folks tell us about like East Texas hunting and like in the national forest and stuff, and they're like, "No, I'm not kidding. Like someone got killed a couple years ago in the forest."
That was last year.
Was it last year?
That was last year, yeah.
Yeah, just people so desperate to shoot a deer. I mean,
when I was a kid, like I said, we hunted David Crockett National Forest a lot. And honestly, looking back on it, I wish that I would have focused more on what my grandfather was teaching me to do and less on the fact that I was just like excited to kill a deer, right? Mm-hmm. So he would basically, you know, do all the scouting, look at all the signs, set me up in a good spot, but I didn't pay attention to any of that. But one particular weekend, like I won't do this with my son, but basically from the time I was old enough to get in a climbing stand, they would just drop me off at a tree and they would be like, "We'll be back at noon," right? Mm-hmm. And so you'd climb up in a tree, you'd have your rope.
With a climber?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You'd have your rope tied to your gun at the bottom. You'd pull your gun up. And so I'm like,
safe.
I don't know, like no safety harness, bro. No safety harness.
Yeah, I didn't know what those were until a few years ago.
It's so wild. And so this one weekend, you know, I had a doe come in and I shot this doe. And then like 2 days later, another doe came, same spot, another doe came in. I think I'm like 11. Another doe came in. I shot another doe. So 2 doe in one weekend, National Forest, is kind of like not unheard of, but it's very hard.
It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Right. Kind of a big deal. Really hard. So like the second doe, when I go down to get her, somebody had dumped like a 200-pound pile of corn right there in the National Forest. And obviously you're not allowed to do that, right? And so I had been hunting over this corn pile for like 5 days and had no idea that I was doing it and killed 2 doe. You know? Statute of limitations has run out. That was like 20 years ago, so I think.
Hey, bro, I'm 11.
Yeah.
Jake was hunting over some corn in Kansas that he didn't know about. Like that
guy
that
is true.
Really?
Yeah. So there was this lake spot, and there was some private beans on this. I don't know, on this other side of the lake, but there was a little sliver of public, and then on the very edge of it, it was a little bitty plot of beans, but around it, that's where all the private beans were.
A bunch of CRP, I think.
Yeah, but on this trail, it was like rub, scrape. And so I was just following that and not thinking, and I get about 3/4 of the way back there, and I see a blind to my right. I'm like, dadgummit, you know, there's someone already back here. I'm just going to keep going since I'm basically already here. Mm-hmm. Well, on my way back, I got my headlamp shining, walking through those woods, and I could see like trail cameras illuminating back at me with that headlamp. And so I'm like, well, and so I just kept walking by him, and I seen a trail camera over here, and we're just shining it. And all of a sudden, I was like, something's glowing right there, too. And it was a big old pile of corn.
On public.
Yeah. And so immediately, I kind of Googled, and I was like, is baiting legal in Kansas? And it was like, no. And I was like, all right, see you later. I'm not coming back here.
So I set up a stand right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was funny because you quit hunting that spot.
It was a good spot, too. Yeah,
it was a good
obviously.
Spot. You don't want to be involved in that.
Yeah, which is a bummer because, like, people will ruin that spot for you. And I don't know how you guys feel, but, like, I do a little public hunting near the house. Not a ton. Basically, if I tag out in the 2 different counties I'm in, then that 3rd county is public, and it's close to the house. Mm-hmm. But if I'm out there scouting and there's cameras set up, it's like I don't even want to hunt that spot because it's like I might have a weird encounter or I don't know that it's tainted, but it just feels weird, right? Like setting up on a spot where somebody else has a camera already aiming. It's like, yeah, this is a good spot where deer are traveling through, but just the risk of like having a run-in with somebody and it being a heated moment is almost like
in
enough.
the dark, you're swinging in the dark.
Yeah, it's almost enough for me to
Turn it
just
on
be
strobe
like,
to blind
I'm just
them.
going to keep walking and look for something else.
Yeah.
We had a guy we know set up a camera in a spot I had been hunting for 2 years, and I was like, sweet, now you just got a camera where I hunt.
Yeah.
And I killed a buck that was on that camera like 40 yards from me. I was like, too bad. Just because you put a camera doesn't mean I'm going to quit hunting.
Correct.
That's right.
Yes.
Like, that doesn't stake your claim because I got cameras in here as well.
Right.
So, but yeah, that's funny. Yeah, public, you're going to find cameras all over the freaking place.
It gets weird. What I realized on this same piece that I'm talking about is not last year, but the year prior, I put about 6 cameras, and they're just Amazon cheapies. Like, if somebody steals it, I don't care. But about half of them, they didn't steal them. They're like, we're going to have manners, but not great manners. They didn't steal them, but they took the memory card.
Dude, that
That's
pisses
worse.
me off even more.
Yeah, bro.
Take
Because
the
you're just
camera.
like, you're like, yeah. You'd be like, it's been 3 weeks. I know I'm going to get in there. I'm going to see some good stuff. And
I'd
then you
rather
open
them
it up
take
and
it.
you're like, come
Just
on.
steal it.
Leave the SD, take the camera.
Yeah, exactly. Those
Just write a
SDs
note, 2 nice bucks.
I want.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because let's be honest, that's part of the rush. Is like the now that we have cameras, it's like half of it is just knowing what's out there. You know, and that's the whole thrill of the hunt anyway. It's like, oh, I've got something to go after. You know, it's the people always ask, what's the thrill of the hunt? Like, what is it? It's not necessarily like when you get something on the ground. It's like the whole lead up,
The anticipation.
the pursuit of it. It's awesome.
Here's a good question, Micah. I know you're a big fisherman. Jake, I don't know about you.
Not much.
Okay, well, same here. We had a question come up the other day in one of the live podcasts we did, and someone said, is cell cameras the live scope of hunting?
No.
You don't think so?
No. Because, like, live scope is real time. I'm there. I can catch you.
Yeah.
Cameras are, I'm at work. I'm at church. I'm out of state. Like, there's so many different variables. I could not be anywhere near. I could not be anywhere near where that's going on, right? So that deer is popping up in front of that camera right then. I'm not in my stand, so there's nothing that I can do about it. Whereas, like, live scope, if I see a fish,
Like a fish before you can tell.
yeah. Well, if I see
Hypothetically on live scope.
if I see a fish in front of me on live scope, I can catch it right now, right? I can literally throw something in there and catch it right now. If it's not biting that, I'm going to change my lures. But eventually, I'm probably going to get that fish to bite. Whereas, like I said, with cameras, you see it, but you're like, there's no way I could even get out there today. And if I can, this is the one time probably today that it's going to travel through where it's at right now. So who cares? I could be there later on this evening, but it's probably not going to be back.
That's a good point. That's a
Yeah.
good point. I just think of the people that, maybe have a back 40, or maybe it's a different type of scenario. Maybe you're in Kansas, there's a lot of ag country, and there's a bean field, and during rifle season, you have a feeder out there, kind of towards the back of the tree line, and all you kind of got to do is just drive up to the gate and, take a few steps out and it depends.
Yeah. It's a little different. Like the situation you're describing.
Small
is different.
percentage, yeah.
Yeah. It's like if you're living on that property, it's 100 yards behind me. I can get my side by side or walk out there, and I'm sitting in my house, and it happens. Yeah, but that's like probably less than 5% of all the hunters out there, right?
Even then, it's hard to get on them and get a shot off too. Like that. If you're
bow hunting, for sure.
Definitely.
Oh, not with a bow.
It's
it wouldn't be
If
able
you're
to.
bow hunting,
It's
for sure.
not happening with a bow.
Crossbow,
even though I'd be like, hey, I'd be more impressed than anything if you pulled that off. But even with a rifle, like let's say 300 yards, there's still that's difficult.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. I think it's all just research, and frankly, I think it's just the commercialization of the hunting industry, which there's so much of that. But
It's just another tool, man. That's all it is. It's just another tool.
I think it's
And
more
think that-
entertainment. Honestly, I use it more as entertainment than tools.
Yeah, but like you look at some of these other states, and a lot of the people that have negative things to say about cell cams or cameras in general are typically states that don't even allow them, right? So it's like, for me, or people who only hunt public who aren't going to put them out because they're going to get stole. Like for me personally, I can't be out at that property all day, every day, and I can't be in, like a million different places at once. But it's really easy to set cameras up so I can make the best decision possible on that, sliver of time that I am able to get away from work or my family to go hunt. It's like if I didn't have those it would be a guessing game. But with those, it's still hunting. It's still hard. You're still not guaranteed success, but you're kind of like tilting it in your favor just ever so slightly.
Yeah, that's a good point. So obviously we want to talk about the story of the buck that you have over
mega.
here. That baseball bat looking sucker over there. But I'm curious, when Jake and Micah too, because I know you've been alongside him in this, when did you guys kind of get more into the land management side of the ground manipulation and planning on properties, that sort of stuff?
That would have been end of 21.
When you got your first piece?
Yeah, I mean, I did a little bit in a former life probably, but I mean, we're talking about like very, very, very little like equipment, and we didn't use a lot of equipment our first 2 years either. We still didn't last year. I mean, we'll change that this summer, but yeah, I mean, it was more like I had a broadcast seeder and learning a little bit about the flow of water on my family piece, like in Central Texas. But even then, like if you're not down there like often enough, like I don't even think when did cell cams start? I know I didn't have any.
I think the first one I got was probably 3 years ago.
Yeah,
3 or 4 years ago.
I'd say that's about right. So, yeah, obviously without cell cams, it was if you're not down there very frequently, you're getting very little intel to even make decisions and changes like mid-season. So, I think that when I really got into it, and I think that's about the same time as you did, was 2021 when closed on a piece of ground. It was a really, really it is a very complicated track to hunt because it's very narrow and it's kind of hard to get to. It's surrounded by
access from one side.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. And even then the access isn't great. I mean, and then you just got all these people variables too, trespasser variables. And so it's really hard to know those pieces and how those are going to influence how you set the land up. But I guess that's kind of the fun too. That's kind of the enjoyment part of it too. So 2021 was when I really like dove in a more like I can control this a little bit easier because of the proximity. I think I became interested, probably a decade ago, but didn't really have the time, energy, effort, proximity to be able to actually influence the land itself.
So what did you guys do year one out here?
Year one, So year one, I don't think you hunted year one, did you?
No, I didn't even think deer existed out here.
Yeah, he thought it was.
He waited till you got some big bucks.
No. It wasn't even that. It was honestly because we were on another piece, so we were on our lease together. And when he got the piece we were talking about, it wasn't very large, and so I was just like, man, I don't know why you're wasting your time out there. There's not going to be any deer out there. Like, let's hunt the lease because the lease is close to like 400 acres. Mm-hmm. And I remember he hunted it the first year and he saw some deer, but really hadn't really sent anything over on camera because he didn't have anything like giant on camera yet. But he had seen stuff and he had taken stuff with cell cam photos. But at that point, I think we were using like iPhone like 8s or something, so it was kind of hard to like zoom in and get super clear pictures. But
we had two.
You really saw some good bucks.
Two really good deer. But I think it's
somebody telling you I saw a good buck and you seeing
that's a subjective term.
Very different.
That could be
things.
Here or here.
Yeah, I'm not saying
you
he
saw
didn't
my garage.
See good deer.
Y'all know the scale that I used to hunt on. It's like
it's the hands.
It's an 8-point. A basket 8 was like, all right, it's at the ears. It's going down this year. I don't care if it's 2.5 years old.
13 inches.
Yeah, 13 was always the magic number. But yeah, in 21. There was some stuff that was already planted when I purchased this, and so there was some wheat. They had some peas, maybe a little bit of beans that didn't come up very well. So there was some stuff that they were actually farming this ground on a larger scale, many years ago, and it's just gotten split a bunch. But yeah, there was 2 spots that I hunted, and then we had a really, really good 10-point. Like I would still say a good 10-point. Mature, and then we had that really good 12 that I believe is the deer that you shot the next year.
Yeah,
I know there's some controversy there, but I think that's the 12-point.
It's just hard to tell because like the tine, or not the tines, but the brow tine aspect of it, because it's like a split 3, and that year it wasn't. But
So the last day of the season, I think it was like January 3rd, I had both of those deer together, which is interesting. Two like really mature deer at the end of the season, like together at about 38 yards. And I was in a ground blind, and I was like, this is the first time I've actually owned a piece of property though. So I was like, no way I'm going to take this right now. I'm like, oh, these guys are going to live in my neighborhood for the next, 2 or 3 years. I'm going to shoot this guy when he's a, monster. And then I don't know if we've ever seen those deer again, unfortunately, just based on what this property is. And it's more of a pass through, but I was ignorant at that point. I hadn't really learned it that well. So I was like, oh yeah, they both got some time. I'm going to let them walk. Looking back, I'm like, man, probably should have dropped that old 10 because we definitely never saw him again.
Yeah.
But that was when it was on. When the season turned over, I think I started hunting the 1st of December. So I only had a month and a couple days. And then we go to Kansas every year. My wife's from Kansas. And so we go to Kansas for Christmas for a week every year. And so that took a week off of hunting. And so I didn't have enough data to make good decisions yet, but the minute that season turned over, it was like, dude, there's some special deer out here compared to what we hunted growing up and compared to what we were hunting on our lease.
Yeah, which were
East Texas
deer,
120s.
you know what I mean? 3.5, 2.5-year-old deer. But
we're not exactly in alignment with our lease mates out in East Texas. Like they're pretty much like
easy
if it's alive.
Yeah. I mean,
if it's legal,
it's just
can't eat the horns.
But that's the thing, 100%. But that's the thing. It's like my motivation to hunt is very much food, but I know that I'm going to kill deer. That sounds a little, I know how that sounds, but I'm going to kill deer every year, so I might as well maximize the deer that I'm killing for the herd, for the basically taking the oldest and most mature buck that I can possibly take. Whereas, like, the properties that we hunt with them, if you're going to hunt and you see a deer, it's a good hunt, right? So if they're going to see a legal buck, they're going to shoot it, which creates this domino effect of 2.5, 3.5-year-old deer every single year getting taken. So you're not really seeing legal bucks very often. So when you do, you're going to shoot it. So, like, between the two of us last year, Jake smoked a doe opening day last year at our lease because we we paid for this place, we've got to hunt it, so we hunted it opening day. Like, we literally
it was
hunted
so hot,
opening day,
bad wind.
He killed
we're going there.
He killed a doe, and then I hunted it 2 times at the end of the season, and so we're paying good money to play on this place.
It's like $100 a pound to hunt out there.
Yeah, but because it's
organic,
the way
certified
it's managed,
organic, a little grain finished, but
yeah, it just makes it a little tough, right? But I mean, like, that's the thing is, it kind of goes back to that old philosophy is like, shoot whatever makes you happy, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
If that makes you happy, then take it. Who am I to tell you, like, just because it's legal, you shouldn't shoot it? Like, yeah, I might try to steer you, like, deer management wise, like, hey, maybe you should wait a little longer so we can kill bigger bucks. But they might not be motivated by the same things that I'm motivated by, because if you're hunting those types of properties and you might see 5 deer all season long, you're probably going to shoot the first thing that's legal because you want to hurry up and fill your freezer because it's empty from the years past. So it's hard for me to argue with. It's more so one of those things that I've accepted with that property as being a meat lease, whereas I might go out there and kill a doe, and if I've got a buck tag left, I might go kill a spike, maybe. But it's also like a legacy thing where my grandfather ran that lease for 10 to 12 years as a lease director, so I stay on it. Because if I were ever to get off of it, the amount of crap that I would have to move off of it would be astronomical.
Oh, it is nuts, y'all. Like,
it's crazy.
Let me just speak into this for a little bit. So I knew his grandpa a little bit, just obviously growing up together, but he has a room in this trailer house that is part of our lease that is like the most, like, it looks like if y'all were in like the 1960s, like Soviet Union, like spy, spy room. I'm talking, guys. It has like every battery you can think of. Okay, every battery.
Like a bug out room?
But basically, And then it has like 2 of the little like vice grip things where he would like crank them down and like work on stuff. And then on the other side, he has like every supply you'd ever need. The other side, he has every tool you could ever need. It literally looks like he was building stuff for the Soviet Union in 1960s and 70s. Like, not the Soviet Union, maybe U.S. I don't know.
The U.S., baby.
But I'm like, the dude could fix anything.
Yeah.
And he was an electrician. And so that is something I admire, because I don't know if y'all are like me, but I'm pretty ignorant on everything but like my niche field. Like I know this really, really well. Mm-hmm. But the rest of this, like, I mean, I would be hard pressed to survive in modern day America without like some of the conveniences and some help, you know?
Yeah.
But a guy like that, I mean, you just walk into this room and you're like, this dude knows how to do anything and everything and fix everything. And it's also like, it literally is, there's stuff in there that's 30 years old. It's really, really cool.
He was a great teacher. But the thing was, so he owned an electrical contracting company that my brother owns now. But basically, anytime he would upgrade tools or equipment or anything like that, he would take the old stuff and just move it to the lease. So if you like needed a drill, if you needed a socket, if you needed a wrench, a battery, any wires for your cameras or feeders or anything like that, there's a whole room dedicated to all this crap at the lease. So it's like sometimes, like at one of his properties, I'll go out and buy stuff, and then I'll go visit the lease like a week later, and there will be 6 of the things that I just bought. And I'm just like, what am I doing? Why am I buying
1,000
things?
batteries out there. I'm like, why do we ever buy 6 volts or 12 volts?
100%.
He's got refurbished ones from, a 1964 Soviet Union AK-47. I'm like, what are we doing,
And unfortunately, he passed in 2021, and so all of this stuff was left to me. And
it's yours.
It's all of mine. And so I just have so much stuff out there that I don't even know what to do with. And so, like I said, anytime we need anything hunting-wise, sometimes I'll go buy it, but most of the time I'm like, I'm going to drive out to the lease because there's a 99% chance we've already got 4 of them there.
So if the world goes to crap, we know where to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come say what's up.
You're going to have to hook up to that trailer and drag it off to, like, your house when you leave that lease.
Yeah, 100%, dude.
Dude, there's some awesome stuff
We've got
out
some
there.
tower blinds, like some 20-foot tower blinds out there. I've got, like, 2 of those. Like 3 like really, really nice box blinds. I mean, I just have so much stuff. Like
My
if I were
favorite
ever
thing-
to lose.
My favorite thing that he built was the cameras that they used to run. He made camera boxes that he would mount on trees.
Like security boxes?
Not even security boxes. They were like weatherproof boxes. And they had like visors on the top. I mean, just like the craftsmanship and like the details that he went to set this lease up is awesome. The other cool piece of it is like, because I've only been on that for 2 or 3 years now. I think this will be my 4th year, but I think that the same stands have been used for 30 years. And so
I don't know why those damn deer look in the tree.
it's the same tree that a guy's been in every fall for
generations
30
of deer,
years. Yeah. They're like, Grandpa told me about this one. It's like, and then the names of some of these stand positions, I'm just like, oh man.
The crapper.
Yeah, and that's why I'm like, I can't wait to do that kind of stuff with my kids, even though I can't seem to throw a boy at this point. We got
Girls
another
can
girl,
hunt, bro.
another girl on the way, but
hunt. My girl's gonna hunt.
we hope.
So coming from East Texas, hunting Central and East and the National Forest and all that stuff, when you first got this property and you first see a couple good bucks in here, was there like a veil that was lifted over your eyes of like, I can shoot big deer, small properties, and like I want to get involved in more in this kind of stuff? Like, did you notice anything? Like, did you realize anything, or do you always kind of know like those deer exist? I want to get into this thing. I just maybe don't have the resources or time to do it previously.
I had no idea what existed. I mean, you'd heard rumors and you'd heard like, the thing about the hunting community is like everybody's like very protective, which I understand. It's great. Like, we're not going to share a lot of details either, but it's like you don't know if a guy actually killed a deer in this county or not, And so I had heard of some legends in certain counties that we hunt in, And so I think you always assume that there's this one or 2,000 acre tract that holds all of these really amazing deer. And it's the same group of 3 or 5 guys that have had access to this, or, you know, there's a farmer and now his sons love to hunt and they're the ones taking these like monsters every year. That's what I assumed. And it was always that like so far away thing where I'm like, I'm never going to have those opportunities to even have, you know, a chance at deer like this. But what I've learned is that you have to understand where you're at and understand what you can handle and what this season can bring you, and then make the best out of it. And so a lot of this first property, we had to learn that it was not somewhere that was going to hold, but it was going to be a travel corridor. So we had to know timing at that point, and then what was going to hold them just long enough to where we could be butt in the stand and have an opportunity at them. So it wasn't necessarily that I realized and the veil was open, like, oh, there's deer here that I'm going to be able to like hunt for long periods of time. It was like, there is a certain opportunity here, and then you had to learn how to capitalize on some of those opportunities.
Take what the property gives you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this gave you a taste. You obviously got a little piece of the ice cream right off the top. When and how did you kind of take the cap off the bottle? Like, I want to dig into something. I want to get my teeth into something a little bit bigger that I can manage, have access from different sides, hold deer, get them to older age classes, put food in, manipulate. When did that kind of inclination come up?
So this property, we really had a blast 2022. Like, we had so much fun. At this point, we didn't live out here yet. And then we hauled a big shipping container out here, and we kept all of our gear and like all
slept
of our,
in it.
Yeah,
Still do.
We sold his house so that we could afford it. No, we had we were talking about like the like basically garden equipment is what we were using out here.
Poor man's food plot.
Exactly. So you're talking
that's
like
relatable.
We had an ATV, but it was like we were pulling a cultipacker, and we were pulling drag harrows that were like 3 foot, so you had to take like 96 passes on an acre.
I gotta sell that thing.
Yeah, it's still sitting in the back of it. It's rusted up as crap.
It still works.
Yeah, it still works. But yeah, but I think it was so much fun. I think 2022 was one of my favorite years where I was like, we learned a lot. 2022, and it was also a really good year for he and I. So over the years, we've had a lot of opportunities where God's just like brought us back together, from a friendship standpoint. When we were in elementary school, we were best of friends. He was always a lot cooler than me. I grew like late in life, and so I was always the chubby, husky kid, but good at sports. And then Micah was always the cool kid, So we had a great relationship at elementary school. Like we butted heads a little bit in high school, just from like just some different paths. But we stayed connected. I would still go grab watch a football game, hang out on, Wednesday nights or Friday nights. We stayed a little connected. He's all-state kicker, so I had to go watch him kick a field goal every now and then.
Are you really a kicker?
I think it was all district.
Yeah,
I don't remember. Yeah.
That's sick.
He's actually a pretty good kicker. But so high school, it was up and down. College, like we actually were in the same town for like a year and a half in undergrad, and reconnected for a minute. But it was just like kind of in passing. We were just like missing each other. But from then until honestly 2022, like it was like a very like a distance kind of thing. But this was one thing that I'll always look at hunting as, yes, I love hunting. I love going to get in the stand. But like what I love is that it brings like people together. So like, why in the world are we sitting in a living room right now talking about it?
Because you shot a 200-inch buck.
Well, fair.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Fair, but I don't know. I just love the community it brings. And so in 2022, when we started, just like, all right, what are we gonna? And I think you came out that winter.
Yeah, you showed me the place.
Yeah,
we had Jackson with us.
January or February of 2022, and you gave your opinion, and we then learned that, oh shoot, this is going to be a very south wind dominant place. This is going to be a one side access type deal. And then I felt a little lost because, like most of the time guys will say like, oh, everything's moving on north winds, or like everything's going to move when the pressure goes up and the temperature drops. And so just learning that that's not always the case.
Yeah, that's true.
And you're not tied to weather patterns, and you're not tied to, certain fronts or certain, pressure changes. Like, you're not tied to that stuff. You really just have to like for me this year, I mean, I don't know if it's a testament or not something I would recommend for 2023, but mine was straight up hours in the stand. Like that's what got this deer on the ground. And so 2022 was a lot more of like strategy, timing, right place at the right time. 23 for me was like just butt in the stand.
I don't think that you're giving yourself enough credit though, because I think that you were just like so smart and calculated with where you sat. It's just the last sit. Obviously we'll get into that later.
We'll get to 23.
Yeah, it was kind of like different. But I mean, like.
So what do you remember about 22?
You saw so many big, nice bucks this year because you set the stand the right way.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas if you weren't playing the wind the way that you were playing it, your access the way you were playing it, you wouldn't have seen those deer.
Yeah.
22
was his year though. It was a really, really fun year. I think that we had probably 4 shooters that year on a really small tract of land. Mm-hmm. And then I took my dad with my one of my good buddies, James, took his dad, and we went up to Colorado and killed my dad's like biggest mule deer ever. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like that was, to me, again, I think hunting is just a way to get a group of folks together to, hang out, enjoy creation. That's what it's all about anyway. So took dad up there. He used to go to Colorado when he was like young 20s with all of his buddies, and then just stopped going when he started having kids. And so I got to take him back up there 25 years later, and he killed a giant mule deer. And at some point, we're going to have to do a podcast on that, because the hunt alone, like I'll need to bring in like Jacob Tittle and James Trawick. Like it's the story is crazy. And the fact that he shot it, where he shot it, how he shot it, it was unbelievable. And then meanwhile, 2022, Mr. Rhett Cation over here is like taking this property by storm and kills a unbelievable deer too in 2022. And that was the probably my highlight of 22 was getting back and getting to celebrate your deer.
So you had gone out to Colorado, and like I said, in 2021, I really wasn't hunting this property. I was hunting the lease. I was like, man, I'm seeing a deer every 5 sits. I don't know if it's worth going anywhere else at this point. And so in 2022, it was like early October. He was like, come out here, we'll hunt together. And I was like, all right, that'll be fun, just like, hanging out and hunting together. So I come out here and I sit the front field, and he sits like kind of over like like a waller basically. And in that sit, I had seen like 6 doe, and I was like, holy crap.
I'm tearing them up. Doing the money.
Yes. They're here. Like, we found the freaking Mecca, bro. And so I was like, this is incredible, right? Like, only seeing one deer like every few sits. I was like, this is insane.
That wears on you.
It's like
does.
70 yards away through the timber, and you're like, that's a deer though.
Yeah.
I can count it.
But honestly, that's my life. I've been hunting since I was 6 or 7, and that's basically been how I've hunted at the properties I've hunted at. It's, you see deer, and it's few and far between. So when I came out here and we hunted together, I was like, this is crazy. So I started hunting it a little bit more, but not like crazy, like it's this fine balance of, Jake's hunting it, his brother-in-law's hunting it, I'm occasionally hunting it, but also hunting the lease a lot.
Yeah, you got to get in where you fit in.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. And also, you don't want to blow the place out.
Right.
And so Jake's like, I'm going to Colorado for a week. Terrible
Unfortunately, freaking missed
literally
the rut.
The best part, I mean, it was like the top uptick of the rut. And so I was like, okay, cool. So I started out hunting that week and took the whole week off, hunted it on like a Sunday. And over the course of like 3 days, I had seen like 100 deer. And so obviously they were moving. I saw a lot of nice bucks. Yeah, I saw a lot of nice bucks, but because it was like our first year really hunting the property hard and correctly, we were really learning where these deer were coming in, right? Like actually how they were traveling, where they were coming in at, how they were traveling based on the wind, all that type of stuff. I'm like trying to connect these dots. And so basically like Sunday through Thursday, I think I missed like 2 days in there because his brother-in-law hunted. As well, we were just kind of switching in and out.
Were you commuting back and forth every single day?
I was, yeah. But it's it's less than an hour away from the house, so it's not terrible. And so by Friday, I was kind of like, I think I have them figured out, and was hunting a saddle and some sticks so I could kind of move, and I was moving. And so I texted his brother-in-law and was like, hey, it was his day to hunt. And I was like, hey, are you hunting tomorrow? And he's like, no. He plays football for UNT. He's like, no, I've got some football stuff tomorrow, so I'm not going to be able to hunt. And I'm like, oh, man, that's unfortunate. But in the back of my head,
bro, are you sure?
Darn. Yeah. But in the back of my head, I'm like, I think I've got them dialed in. You know, I've been out here 3 or 4 days this week. I think I've got them dialed in. So I had like come up the night before, moved my stand or basically my sticks to the opposite side of the field based on the wind and everything, set up. And I think 2 days prior, right, you had gotten a picture.
Yeah. So, and I looked back to confirm this.
Okay.
3 days, we see like what I believe is him now, but we didn't realize it was him back then. And then the next day, he showed up at 9 p.m. after dark. We sent it. I think Dad killed his mule deer the next day. You weren't there that day. Nobody was there that day.
Yeah, I was
you
at
had
the
something
lease.
at work.
No, I was at the lease. I took the whole week off. I was at the lease. I killed a doe that day in the rain, I remember.
And then that's what it was. It was a rainy day, so you decided to pass that day. And the next day is when he
fair
showed
weather
up.
hunter.
Okay. Yeah. No, I still hunted.
That's what I'm hearing.
I hunted the
Nah,
lease.
he was in a blind.
I killed
Don't let him give you this. He was covered.
Yeah, I was, but I killed the doe that day in the rain at the lease. But like
in a blind.
in a blind. But
Buddy, he did or no?
so you're right. So he had sent me some
He had a
pictures
heater,
of
too.
this buck, but he was big, but we really didn't know what he was. Right? He was kind of just like a really nice buck, but we really didn't know what he was. But he was traveling kind of the same way, and that wind was going to be working itself perfect for the route that he was traveling. So like I said, I got there the night before when it was dark, moved my sticks over, set my stand up, hunted all day long. It was like 15 minutes till dark, and was kind of not discouraged because I had seen a ton of deer, but was just kind of like, okay, well, I guess it didn't work out today, but there's still a lot of season left because it was like I think November 17th or somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And
You're like calling UNT, like you guys got practice tomorrow, right?
yeah, right.
Please schedule it.
Yeah.
And so I see this. We were also after this tall 8, like, you know, probably like 4.5, 5.5-year-old 8-point, really, really nice. And he comes across the field, probably at like 200 yards, working right to left, and gets across the field. And I had known just from sitting out there all week long that once they get over there, they'll do this big loop, and then they'll come back around and walk basically right in front of where I'm at. They're just kind of getting like downwind of everything and going up this creek. Yeah, and going up this creek. So I'm like, okay, I know exactly what he's going to do. So I'm like, sit tight. In about 7 minutes, this dude is going to be in front of you. And so it's about 7 minutes later, I hear some leaves crunching over to my left. And I'm like, okay, here he comes, right? Like, I'm going to shoot this buck.
So you were going to plan on taking him.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd ever heard you say you were going to take Too Tall Jones or whatever we called him.
Yeah, so I was definitely...
Dude, he undersold it. This deer was like, I mean, so tall.
Yeah.
It was awesome. He wasn't super wide, but like such a cool 8-point.
Yeah, really, really cool. And so I was
we
like,
all love 8-points here, right?
Absolutely. I don't
Okay.
discriminate.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I'm going to shoot this buck when he comes. And so I just start hearing leaves crunch, right? And so I'm like, okay, cool. He's about to come through. And there's this big, like, fallen, almost like if you were to hinge cut something, it were to fall out into a field. So I just see kind of through this, like, tree that's, like, falling over. I see this deer walking, and I see these antlers. And I realize that's not the same deer. That is substantially bigger than that 8-point. And I start shaking. And I don't really get buck fever. Like, I get it more with doe, which is weird.
You get East Texas buck.
Yeah,
You're
which
like, woo.
well, I get it a lot more with doe because I guess like with doe, I feel like they're more keyed up and there's a lot more of them usually, so they're gonna see you. With bucks, I just kind of like dial in and I just kind of like go through the thought process. But I started to shake a little bit and I was like, okay, you're going to miss this buck if you don't calm down. I was like, so think about what you need to do. So I was like, don't draw back until he's out in the open because if he spooks, at least he's going to like kind of stand still and like start looking, but he's out in the open, right? Range where you think he's going to come out. I range, he's like 22 yards. I'm like, okay. So like pull back, make sure you got your anchor point, like level. I go through everything in my head. So I'm like not thinking about the deer, I'm thinking about the process. And so at that point I like start to get calm. And so he steps out at 22 yards, I draw back. And he doesn't stop, so I just give him a meh. He stops and just let it loose and just drill him, right? And so, I mean, it was one of those ones where you hit him and you just start making calls. Because
Is he down?
no, like,
Is he down?
you start making calls because you're like,
He's done.
He's done. and I heard him crash. And so I called Jake. Like I said, my grandfather passed, and he's like a big reason I hunt so much. So I called my grandma, told my grandma. Of course, I called my dad. So I called all the people, which I don't do. Like, I don't do until the buck's on the ground. But he was dead. He was dead. And so did all that. And I'm one of those people that's very impatient. And the truck was really far away. So I'm walking all the way to the truck. My phone's about to die, so I'm not going to walk back out until it's at 20%. So I plugged it in, walked back out after it got 20%, and he was dead 10 yards into the woods. And he was 152 and some change.
As an 8?
No, this is a different buck.
Gotcha.
So this one was like a typical 10 with like a kicker, and then he had a split 3 like on his brow tines. So he was a 13 point.
I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah. So
Beautiful.
So it's really cool.
It's on his
Obviously,
mantle.
yeah, it's over my mantle. Obviously, the biggest buck I've ever killed, 152 inches. Right, hunting like public and like East Texas type of stuff. You don't just shoot bucks like that. So I just remember like calling them, like FaceTiming them, and like seeing his dad and seeing
All the
James
boys,
and him.
man. It was like we were all crowded.
Wild. But yeah, at that point I was like, because I didn't really know what Collin County had at that point. Everybody knows we were on another podcast talking about it.
Yeah, Rogan had us on the other day, and
Yeah.
we had to spill the beans.
That
I'm
was you
sorry.
with campaigns? That's sick.
Sorry.
I didn't know what it had until that point because I'm just an East Texas kid, Northeast Texas kid, and so then I was like, okay, this is legit, right? Like this is the real deal. At that point, like when people are like, could you score a deer on the hoof? I'm like, anything over 130, I'm like, it's big. It's big. I don't know. It's big. It's a shooter, right? And so that kind of like opened the door to like a next level of like big buck hunting, I guess you could say.
We have a very easy scale to follow. It's an oh damn factor. If you look down and you go, damn.
Yeah.
That bow levitates into the hand. A little different on private, right? You got better management and you're trying to get them to age. But on public. Sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes. That bow levitates.
The deer that you shot this year, I think we'd seen him one time, but it's not like we had like, oh, that was a target, and like we either want to take him or not take him. It's like you trust the guys you put in stands, and it's like, hey, if it's a mature deer and it's something you would enjoy and be proud to hang up, you take him.
Yeah, I think, if you enjoy it and it's mature, shoot him.
Yeah.
If it makes you happy.
Yeah, and that's the thing, though, learning what mature is. I mean, we got rocked in terms of like, and we'll get there. I know that we're trying to go year by year.
I got some details about that I want to share.
Because I'm just floored, and we'll get there. Basically, we were all wrong about the age class of this deer.
Pretty close.
Say it again.
No, you weren't. We were all wrong.
So talk me through what you guys did to set up this property in 2022.
2022, so we had you out.
I remember.
Consultant extraordinaire.
What did I charge? Like $8 in breakfast or something?
I don't even think I had breakfast
Probably
for you,
overpriced, honestly.
I think I had coffee for you. That was it. And then Jackson.
Yeah.
He was tiny back then.
Yeah.
Do you look at those pictures? He was so tiny.
Yep.
So I wanted to have a north wind spot for this place as bad as like I wanted to breathe, but it just really doesn't work. And so we really classified this place as like an east-west wind setup. So that's how we planned everything. And he ended up killing his deer on a west wind night. I don't even know if it was north or south. It didn't matter because it was a strong westerly. And that's what I'm learning a little bit. It's like you want to know what the most prominent aspect of the wind's going to be. That's what I'm learning.
Yeah.
It's like I'll see like northwest and I'm like, okay. But when you get there, you learn it's like it may be northwest, but it's all north or it's all west. And like that's what I'm having to learn. It's like when I get to the property, I'm like, what is the most prominent wind? Where is it going to carry it? And then I've recently started learning about thermals. So
What does it do with my topography? Too,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So now we hunt the riverside with an east wind, especially in the evenings, because that's just going to suck the scent down. But then the problem with that is because that's where you sat for most of the rut in 2022. But then you realize to get in there, you basically had to cut through all of the all the fields we had planted. So I think reverse back to like January, February, we decided to do I do a lot of like no-till drilling and cover crops just because I've only been able to, at this point in my life, afford floodplain property. So when you get, looking at my backyard right now, there's standing water everywhere. And so you really can't turn that soil over every, 2-3 times a year and then have rain just sit on it for months on months on months, especially February, March, and April, because this is when you'll lose a lot of your topsoil if you've tilled it. And like I know that's like a controversial subject, especially for like a lot of my like longtime farming families that I have relationships with now, because they don't know another way. They've understood this is the way that we've done it for years and years and years and years, and it works, and they can produce cash crop. But what's happening is they're losing a lot of their topsoil to the river systems, and then that's ending up somewhere else. So we're actually losing ocean eventually, but don't need to go there. But so we committed to not tilling this specific property because it was really small. It was hard to get equipment to, and it was all floodplain. So I think the first thing we did was we mowed everything down. No, I killed everything first. And then we just left it because I really didn't know what I was doing yet. I think that the best, if I would change anything right now, especially if I was doing no-till drilling, I would get a really, really big, heavy drill on the driest day that you've got in like March. And I would maybe April, because March has been extremely wet this year in 24. I would get the driest stretch of 10, 14 days, and I would plant at the end of that. And I would get the heaviest drill you'd have, and I would plant through whatever junk you've got. Especially if this is year one of your property, you're going to have like a lot of native grasses, which are good, but then you're going to have whatever somebody planted 10 years ago, because those old seed beds are still producing. And so the best way that we learned to do it is, we didn't do it in this order in 2022, but I would recommend drilling what you want to grow over the summer, and then come back behind it and either manually kill it or, spray it. We did both that first year. So basically what that did is it broke the stems off at the very bottom. We used a crimper. Yeah, we used a.
I know some of those words.
It's a cultipacker is like the big drum, like the big plastic drum, and it's got like a little bit of blades to it. But you fill it with water or sand, and you pull that behind. They make some for your ATV. They make some for. There's some big tractor implements too that you can buy, and then you can. What the theory is it'll break the stem off at the very bottom, and it'll actually terminate that plant. So it's not just rolling it over; it's terminating it at the bottom. And then when you roll that stuff over, you leave that as a first layer of fertilizer. So over the years, you have to your input is a lot lower. And so over time, it actually does save you a lot of money, because you're saving on fertilizer, which we learned this year one at a different property. Fertilizer can be very, very expensive if you're farming on a big scale. So the strategy worked awesome, because our summer stuff was incredible. Like we planted like a blend. It was like anywhere from like Milo to we had some like hemp and sunflower stuff that would go really, really deep. So it's cool. Like if you really get into this like land management stuff, you want to find some plants that have different root systems at different levels, because they'll go and grab nutrients from the bottom that isn't available at the top. And that's a lot of the problem with modern day farming, is we're only using like the first 6 inches of the soil, and we're just turning it over year after year after year. And basically all of the good stuff is down here, and we're just not getting to it, specifically nitrogen and phosphorus and some others. And so we're having to add that manually through fertilizer. And so if you can plant stuff that will go deep and pull that stuff up and break that soil a little bit down here, it's awesome.
What are those things?
There's a lot of really deep plants. So sunflowers are great, and they're also really good for pollinators too. So I saw a huge uptick in bees here. And obviously that's going to help all your other plants. Hemp's another good one. Not the stuff that you
I'm on hemp
that
right
you
now.
guys use
I
in
tried.
Oklahoma.
It doesn't work.
But like there's actually like there's sunflower hemp and there's some other there's
Are brassicas a deep? Do they go deep?
no, not really.
Even
Not
with that
really.
big turnip on there?
No, they're not. They're mostly on the top. They're mostly on the top. I can get you guys a list. There's my summer blend was probably 10 products deep, and you can do a couple different ways. I mean, I know a really good company called Green Cover. It's a faith-based company out of Kansas. They're awesome. And they make a couple really good blends that will help you like build your soil over time, but also feed deer over time. That's why I liked it, because they didn't just make it all about the soil science, and they also didn't make it all about the deer population either. It was like how can you get both? And I believe that they've made a few blends that are possible. And then what we did this year is, instead of buying from an organization that would package these seeds for us, we went to a co-op and we basically designed our own bags. And we actually found a bag that had basically everything we wanted for the fall. So that was kind of nice. We didn't have to necessarily like do a custom blend there, but you can get creative in that way too, where find a local, farm co-op and have them put together, especially if you're buying in a large scale, they can really outfit you specifically for what you want. And then once the summer ran through, what I learned about this property specifically is it never flooded again. Where we planted never had water sitting on top of the ground. It was awesome.
It just helped it drain more? Is that?
I think you have so much density, so much plant density, and the requirements from those plants just suck all that stuff down. Not to mention, if you think about it, think about the earth as kind of like layers. So if you're running a disc, which is very common, or a plow, and most guys will plow first, and basically what that's doing is it's going and grabbing dirt and it's just flipping it. Okay, and the disc kind of turns the earth. So plow is going to get the deeper stuff and flipping it for you, and then you run the disc over that, and it just turns that soil. Which, if you want the powdery, fluffy stuff, that's what guys that are planting corn right now, specifically in Texas, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for the real powdery stuff that they can plant corn right in, because then corn can start really quick. But the problem with that is, if you're running a disc, say a disc can only go like 6 to 8 inches, it's only going to get down to here. And what happens is you're compacting right below that. And it's almost making like this like concrete layer that the roots have a really hard time penetrating at that point. Especially if you're not planting really deep root systems
that break up that stuff,
or crops that are going to go deeper. And so that's why I think that it's important to think about, okay, what are we preparing for in the fall? I get it. We all want to kill great deer, but it's also like, what can we do in the off seasons that are going to, number one, keep our herd healthy, but also, preparing your soil to grow what you want in the fall. I think that's a really, really important feature, because like I tell some guys this all the time, and they're like, well, I just don't care. Like I only want to hunt in the fall, so why would I ever think about doing something in the spring? Why would I put that input in? What I try to explain to them is over time that input decreases to the point where you only need to buy seed, and then it's just like sweat equity off. Obviously, like you got to get out there and you got to plant it. But then the next step was we would rent a no-till drill from one of the co-ops around here, and they would drop it on my property here, and then at that point we'd have to rent a tractor, hook the tractor up to the drill. It was a process, and then we'd drill our crops in, and I was so pleasantly surprised with how well this ground did in 2022 based on not a ton of work.
Yeah.
We basically just manually and chemically sprayed and terminated what was there, which was, I think it was basically just used for hay fields. I think it was probably a little bit of winter wheat, but I couldn't really tell. It was probably a little cereal rye, and then probably just a bunch of Bermuda grass that they were just, baling for hay. But once we killed that, we drilled what we wanted, which was probably about a 10 ingredient blend that would both build the soil, but also give like great nutrition for the wildlife throughout the year. Now, this is not a strategy if you're trying to harvest summer crop, like not a good strategy. Exactly. Not everybody, not all listeners are farmers at this point, but you're not going to get anything going into the fall. Now, I have some other strategies for fall stuff that accomplish both that you can then harvest, but this is basically preparing the ground, preparing the soil for then to plant into, your fall crop, which for us in 2022 did really, really well. I would say the wheat did awesome, which kept, I think there was probably 10 to 12 acres of just straight wheat. That's why he saw so many deer that fall. I mean, I did not get to see.
Chomp it up, dude.
Yeah. And there was so much available. When I zoomed out on our mapping software and I looked, I was like, okay, what is happening in our area? Like, what is being planted? And you can tell cultivated fields, you can satellite imagery what is being cultivated on a regular basis. You'll see the lines, and that's especially if they're updating. Like, I don't know if y'all saw this, but like a lot of the satellite imagery is updating every other month now.
Oh, interesting.
It's crazy. So I know
stop tanning naked in my back.
It'll be on there.
They don't have a microscope, buddy.
You're gonna need a big one.
There's something there. There's something there.
So this is you guys use this place as like a proving ground to see what you can do on a small scale, and then upgrade that obviously to a bigger scale. So what did you guys, or walk me through what happened in 23 where you guys are now on a bigger piece? Like, what's the origin story of that, and what were some of the considerations that you had looking for a bigger piece of property to manage?
So I think in 2022, we learned a lot of really good lessons on what would come up and what wouldn't come up in terms of food and how we planted it. We had some other stuff in our fall blend stuff that did not come up well, but the wheat did extremely well here. And so we took that information and we're like, okay, so we had the early winter. So it was basically, December, January, February. We didn't do anything on this piece. And then we actually designed this place a little differently. So what we decided to do is, instead of having about 12 acres of just open ag field, we decided to split it up a little bit. So number one, we would save money on the fall crop that we had to plant. And so we did micro plots. So we basically did like 1/2 to 1 acre plots, and we did 3 of them. And then we basically cut a path to each one of those plots that the deer could not see. We cut down the visibility, so we didn't cut straight lines. We cut lines that weaved, so these deer couldn't see into the next spot. They had to go and either scent check it or sight check it to be able to get to it.
I don't remember what podcast we listened to that told us to do that, but we did it.
It wasn't ours. We don't do any deer management.
It worked.
Habitat management is not our forte.
Yet.
Yeah, but it's basically like, I mean, if you think about the concept of it, right? If a deer is standing, like a buck, is standing on one side of a field and it's looking towards the other side of the field and it doesn't see anything, what reason does it have to walk to the other side of the field, right? Or if it's a 5 acre plot. Whereas if it's a 1 acre plot on this side and a 1 acre plot, or a 1/2 acre plot on this side and a 1/2 acre plot on this side, and in between it is a bunch of CRP and just kind of like a weaving path to get there. Well, if I'm on this side and I'm really ramped up and I want to see if there's any doe, I can't just look. So I'm going to be on this side. I'll maybe feed for a minute or just come out and check the field, but then I'm going to have to walk to the other side. So it's like, regardless of, what that, really, whether that buck's there to feed or not, if he's looking for doe, and we have all of this crap separating each field, he's going to have to walk to check each one. And if he walks into that field because they were micro plots, we could basically kill him, right? Whereas like the year prior, like Jake said, we kind of learned a 5 acre plot of rye or a 5 acre like food plot is great, and you see lots of deer, but because it's so open and they can go anywhere they want,
You're not manipulating movement very well.
Correct.
Right.
Whereas like this year it was like, well, if they're in the field and they're in the plot that you're hunting, you're going to kill them, or you're going to at least have a shot at them.
It was also easier to get to the spots that we were hunting too, because this I mean, what we would consider CRP, even though it wasn't like, government CRP.
I call it CRP, but
it was native grass or whatever we planted a year, 2 year ago, 3 year ago, whatever is coming back up. It would be really, really, really high. So I mean, it was like 7, 8, 10 feet tall, and so our access got better and better and better. Now, if you believe that if you walk through something and you're leaving, scent along the way, then yeah, you're going to probably cut down on, like, maybe a mature buck's going to get your scent when it's walking down that trail. But at least from a visibility standpoint, you could get back to the back a little bit easier. And I actually hunted that 2 or 3 times, and that was that riverside spot that I was telling you guys about earlier, that we always wanted it to be a north wind spot, but we had to give up on the north-south stuff, and we had to really just commit to hunting east and west dominant winds. And so if we had a wind that was blowing our scent back into the river, it was just dynamite over there. And that came up amazing. Like, that was our best one by the river. Our plot came up beautifully. And that's when we did some brassica mix. We did some turnips and radish, and I mean, it really did do extremely well. And I think that, to me, I come from like a little bit more of a farm ranch background, and so wheat's going to be your mainstay, and it's the best tonnage, in my opinion, for a lot of different, both stuff you raise like cows, and also for deer. It's just a really productive crop in Northeast Texas. So wheat did amazing. The brassicas did awesome, and so that worked really, really well. However, we don't have a lot of proof from it because we didn't hunt this property a lot, because as we were preparing for the season here in July was when we closed on the property on the other side of the county. And so we kind of shifted gears a little bit because we had a lot more genetic potential there, and then we started seeing trail cams that were just like dynamite. We were like, okay, if we have one day to hunt, where are we going to be? We're going to be in the spot that we think that we're going to, have an opportunity of 170, 180.
In what state did you inherit that property? You buy it, like, what are the fields cultivated? Are there access trails, or is it pretty raw and wild when you first step on it?
This property the second property we bought was, well, actually the first one as well were pretty wild. I mean, I think that both of the pieces were farm ground many, many, many years ago, but I think a lot of them have been, honestly abandoned.
From a deer perspective, that's not terrible.
No, it's not
bedding, but not for food.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So I mean, you have to go back and forth and be like, am I creating bedding here? Am I preserving bedding here? Or am I trying to create food because there's an abundance of bedding?
It looked like a property that was used for farming at one point, but for the past 5 years was like trying to return back to its natural state.
Yeah.
Yeah, to where you're like, okay, I can tell that these fields were obviously made and set up at one point for farming, but nobody has looked or touched them for 5+ years. And you felt it. I mean, like, there was no trails. It was hard to get around. It was just a pain to go 100 yards on that place, honestly, because everything was grown up 10, 12 foot tall. So you're just like, I know this field has, 500 yards that I can drive across going this way, but it was like miserable to do anything.
There could be a ditch in the middle of it.
Yes.
So your butt's kind of puckering when you're trying to brush hog it.
I'm
100%.
The first time he showed me that property, we almost ran into a river. Like, he was just like,
bad.
There's a river this way. And I was like,
it was
cool.
a lot closer than I thought it was.
Yes. So, I mean, everything was so grown up that when you're driving in your side-by-side or four-wheeler or anything, you can literally see a foot in front of you. And you're just like, I know what's this way, so we're just going to drive. I mean, that's how wild it felt. Like, describing it to people was basically like I just said, it was like a property that was farmland, but that God was basically like, we're going to return it back to its natural state.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it literally felt like, the earth was trying to claim it back.
That's when you light a cigarette and just say,
Yeah. I don't know what happened.
Yeah. So obviously everybody's heard of those bucks that, summer in one place and then they might fall on your property or vice versa. When you guys are manipulating this land, I don't know how much history you have year to year with these properties, but have you seen any of those bucks that usually summer on your property and move off during the fall? Have you seen any of those kind of turn into a homebody for that property?
I think the end of that, yes. I feel like there are certain deer at a certain age that decide this is where I want to be. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that magic age is. I'm going to say 5.
5.5.
5 based on what you're going to tell us next. But I feel like the younger bucks, they are just a complete, it's completely random. And
they're trying to run around and not get their ass kicked.
100%. Yeah. They don't have home ranges, I believe. I think that
they're
go
establishing that pecking order. Too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think they go where they're able to go.
Yeah.
And so you'll see a really good, for example, so out at this first property that we were talking about earlier, we, at the beginning of this year, so I guess this hunting season would have been fall of 23, we had about 5 or 6 in a bachelor group, and about 3 of them were shooters, 160 plus. 150 plus. I'll be conservative.
Oh, dang it.
Maybe. Yeah, I can't shoot it now.
I know. Let's not even go out there. It's a waste of time. So, amazing deer. Didn't see a single one of them this fall on cameras. It was very, very odd. And so what I think happens is, number one, that can tell you that bucks go everywhere. And it also tells me that there was probably something a little bit more dominant here that called this area home. That's what it tells me. Because if you think about it, there's something running those younger deer out of here, or why would you leave if you didn't have to? There's plenty of doe. We have 2, 3, 4 family groups of doe that we know of on a very small tract of land here. I would confidently say there's 3 doe families here that I see on a regular basis on different aspects of the property, of different parcels of the property. And then if you go to the second property now, which is much bigger, it's probably, 6 or 7 times bigger. We still are very aware that there is probably 3 to 7 family groups, but they're big. What I've learned is that there's 3 groups of 7 to 10 doe that move in a certain location and bed in a certain location. So if you've got this might just my theory, I'm not a
bro science
ecologist or something, but or I'm definitely not a biologist, even though I do have some of the undergraduate for that, but not in deer science. But so if you've got a really, really, really mature deer that can whoop everybody else's butt, he's going to have that section of property, and he's going to have access to that specific family group. If somebody comes in and challenges him and beats him, yeah, they get access to that. But why would you leave? Why would you go roaming somewhere where you had adequate food, shelter, water, and does? So that's my theory, that if you do have a homebody, then that's probably your shooter.
Yeah, that's a good point. Me and Carol had an 8-point on our lease this year, and we called him the refrigerator. He was every bit of 250 live weight. And Carol ended up shooting him in December, and I think we're going to find him here in shed season.
Poor guy.
But, yeah, this deer was
He looked dead in the video, man. When you sent it to me, I was like, yeah, that's a dead deer.
Yeah. Well, this deer in the summer, he's like a 130-inch frame. He's probably a 120s, 8-point, maybe not even 120s, but he has these little crab claw eye guards. And we noticed every mature buck we had quit using that little area right there. He was the big dog in there, and I told Carol for multiple weeks, man, you think we ought to shoot him? He's the only buck that keeps showing up. I was like, yeah, if you want to see other deer, we probably should kill that deer. It's nobody's messing with that deer. And he came in, that deer in November, eye guards broken up, G2's broken off. I'm like, yeah, I'd say he was putting some whooping on some people. So, yeah, and that happened. We did not have another good buck at that stand until Carol shot that buck.
That's what people call a bully buck.
A bully buck, and I will shoot them all the same. They make me just as happy.
Yeah.
But so you guys come in the summer. You said July, right? What takes place from there? What did you guys say? Hey, day one we got to do this, and then we got to do this in the next month. Because July, you're
3 months from deer season. Less
Yeah.
than 3 months.
But it's also hot, so.
It's
Yeah.
so hot, dude.
It's miserable.
Day one, I was looking at some pictures. Y'all can't see this, but my little baby girl is like so chubby in this picture. So cute.
Yeah.
So that's our closing picture, and I think it was on like the July 14th. She's not as chubby anymore. And then July 15th, I had my folks out. And so part of the reason why I wanted to buy this property was that I wanted to have a place that we could all build on one day and enjoy and like, you know, whatever. Second aspect was I just wanted to have a place where we could not control, because, you know, we can't control anything, but just manage the way that we wanted to
Steward
manage
it, yeah.
and potentially hold and steward what we wanted. So yeah, steward is probably the best word. It's good. So the day after we closed and signed the paperwork, I had my folks out, and we had, because the way that I grew up hunting, and you know this, but it's like, it's a lot of feeder-based stuff in East Texas, because you don't have as much native forbs as where you do in other areas, and then you definitely don't have a lot of the ag that some counties and parts of the country have. So my family that I've married into, they're in an area where it's like very, 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 very ag heavy. So it's corn and beans, corn and beans, corn and beans, corn and beans, and that's why these deer have such awesome growth trajectories, because they have so much food they can count on every single year. There's safety in that. So what I've learned about East Texas deer is like they're missing a lot of that like food they can count on. So I assumed that would be the case at this new property. So immediately we walk in and we do what we think we know how to do. So we pick 2 spots, and you advised on one of them where we would drop it, and then we settled on another one that we dropped the other one. We put 2 feeders in, and we filled them with corn, set a couple feeders on, or set up a couple cameras on them, and we're like, all right, let's start seeing what we can see. And he's right. When we first drove up to this place, it was beautiful, but it was like, my
Wild.
gosh, there is like, you can't see stuff. I mean, everything was so grown up. There wasn't ag on this thing. There wasn't cattle on this thing. It was just left to be. And then I learned that a lot of this was a conservation easement. That's another reason. It's mostly flood, and then it's a conservation easement. So that's what also helped me afford a tract like this. And so, I mean, a lot of folks, after the podcast that we were on a couple months ago, I had some people reach out to me and they're like, hey, I want to get into I want to like see if I can buy some land. And so those are some things to look for, because if you have some land that's flood, it takes a lot of money and a lot of effort to bring stuff out of flood. So that's one trick you can, if you just want to get, into cattle or wildlife or whatever.
Purely recreational stuff.
Yeah, recreation for sure. But you can also do a lot with farm and ranching in flood acres if you're smart and you're not stuck in the traditional ways. So that's one thing. And then I actually found this tract because it was in a conservation easement, which is basically a tax strategy. You can look it up for yourself if you want to learn how folks mitigate tax through this, but it's basically a donation to the state where this ground cannot be developed for anything that it was not created to function as, which is awesome for us.
Yeah.
Now there have been a few things that we've ran into where like, okay, like that's not, the greatest thing in the world. Like there's a little bit of restriction on how we can modify or upgrade the bedding areas and the timber blocks, things like that. But other than that, we've really enjoyed being able to use the property for actually what it was created to do. And so the first thing I remember after we set those 2 cameras and feeders is we immediately scheduled a mowing and trail day. Do you remember anything before that?
Yeah, so me and you, before we did the mowing and trail day,
Scout days. We had a lot of scout days too.
Yeah, so me and you went out there and looked at everything. You had your fence guy come out that same day, but basically we went through there and scouted everything, looked at the property. This was my first time getting eyes on the property. Really just looked it over, looked at the property lines, what we could do with it, kind of where we saw or thought the deer were traveling, set up some cameras, and then at that point, I think it was like 2 weeks later, we started talking about getting some trails mowed and basically access to be able to see what the heck we were doing. And we had a clear definition of what we could plant and what we couldn't plant at that point based on the conservation easement. And so, thank God for Onyx. We went back and forth, kind of planned everything out. And then as far as like trails went, food plots went, everything like that. And then I met Jason out there, and basically we spent an entire day mowing trails and just cutting stuff down and basically making it to where we were able to access things, cutting because of the way the property is set up and the conservation easement. There's no large food plots except for I guess there's 4, but considering the property, that's not a whole lot. But most of them are like small kill plots because of the conservation easement. You can't plant inside the easement. You can only plant outside of it. So they're mostly like half-acre plots. So cut a lot of trails, cut these plots, started cutting up. We saddle hunt, so basically starting cutting shooting lanes and everything like that, and basically just setting it up to be huntable. But at this point, it was still like early August when that was happening. We hadn't planted anything. It was just like cutting out the shape in which we hoped to plant. And then a couple weeks later, maybe a week later after that, I went out there and killed everything off so we could plant.
Yeah, the design aspect of it actually worked out really, really well.
Yeah, it did. It was like a forced design, but that worked good.
Yeah. And we'll make a few modifications. I think access is going to be like deadly this year because we've learned like where we need to like cut some trees back to be able to punch into places. We've learned where they travel in and out. I mean, it's funny because what I've learned about e-scouting is that I can be more effective e-scouting now because of that I've bought 2 properties, have assumed some things about e-scouting, and then have gotten boots on the ground and been like, oh, that's not the way this works.
Yeah.
And so now I can e-scout even better. And so what I try to track back is based on what we know about our property, having hunted it for a season, what can we do for the next season that just makes a lot more sense, And so we've located that there are 2 primary bedding areas. And so in my opinion, bedding is king. And I know a lot of people will say like food is, and I think bedding is king specifically in Northeast Texas because it's so populated. There's so many people here and there's so much industry happening, which is they're all good things. But if deer don't have a sanctuary and safety, it's going to be really hard to see them, grow them, and keep them. And so that's what we're designing all of our stuff around now, is that we have 2 awesome, really, really big bedding areas that we really want to keep safe. I punched into a couple of them, maybe 2 or 3 times chasing this buck in 23, and I felt like I didn't do us any good.
Do more harm than good.
Yeah, totally. And you hear of a lot of guys, it's like, oh, right time, right place. You go straight into that bedding area, you beat them back to bed, and you like catch them coming back in.
Yeah, one time.
Exactly.
Better kill him.
You better have the exact trail that dude's coming down, or you're done.
Kind of like going back to what I was saying earlier. Like, I didn't think that you were giving yourself enough credit, and the fact that we were incredibly intentional about how we hunted this property this year. Like, we kind of decided from the start, like, we weren't going to get in the stuff, in the bedding, really, unless it was absolutely necessary. So we just kind of hunted the fringe and the edges to really not, like, push anything out. It was like anything that's here and that we're seeing on camera, because we were seeing nice bucks, we're not wanting to push out. They're coming out on camera, like, semi-occasionally, right? So it's like, why in the world would we dive in there and push them out? Like, we're not gun hunting to where if you see something a few hundred yards away, you can get a shot at it. it's like if you see it, you're probably jumping it and you probably won't see it again for a minute. Yeah. So instead, hunt on these fringes. They're going to come out to feed. They're going to come out to check these fields for doe. So just make sure your wind is right, your access is right, and unless it's absolutely necessary, stay out of it. And so we did.
I like that you guys took a mobile approach to it too. It's like you have the patience to say we're not going to figure this out year one. Mm-hmm. We don't have any historical knowledge. We know there's good deer in this area, and you hunted it and dissected it more like a guy would on a piece of public than you did a piece of private. It's like, let's hit it from this angle and this angle and this angle and this angle, and that really wasn't the right tree, so I'm going to back off a little bit, or I'm going to go in a little further next time. And I feel like keeping that curiosity and not just going in and making those assumption of, oh, here's a nice creek, here's a bedding area, here's food. I'm going to set this tree stand up, and I'm going to force this to work, because a lot of deer hunters are going to do that.
There, and then just call it good.
Right. A lot of people are going to use a feeder or something to try to affirm their assumptions. Well, if there's not a deer here, I'm gonna put a feeder here, and I'm going to make them come here. It's like, well, what you guys did is, like, obviously you have the food and you manipulated it, but you really took a step back and said, I'm going to see what the deer do, and then we're going to adapt our strategy around that. And I think that's wise, especially on a piece like that. That seemed to work really well for you guys. What was the first time you guys got a big buck on camera?
August.
Which one?
August, Ag Side Express.
Which buck was it?
Big 8, and then we had another really good 10-point.
Okay.
We have all these very generic names for a deer, and what we're learning.
Big 9.
We're like, we've got to get more specific with these names.
But the thing is like when they're not like super unique, like we had 2 really, really big 8 points, probably like 140-inch 8 points. Mm-hmm. But the thing is you're just like, what's a big 8? You know what I mean? So you just kind of go with big 8. But like if they've got like all these kind of crazy kickers and stuff, then you're just going to come up with a better name for them. But if it's just a big 8 point. But yeah.
But I think we should start naming deer not according to their antlers, but according to something else.
All right. I think we should do it to like first round draft picks that are busts. You know what I mean? Like that's what we should start doing.
Johnny Manziel.
Yeah. There you go.
The Manziel.
So, no, I mean, the cool thing about this is I think that maybe 3, 4, or 5 years ago, there were some people hunting this. And then 6, 7, 8, 10 years ago, there was people running cows on this. And I've actually met the guy that managed this really big ranch, which encompassed our property plus like a few other 1,000 of acres. He managed it for cows. And they always knew that there was, really good wildlife, but none of them were hunters. And so they were just trying to optimize these properties for cattle. And so what I've learned over time is there is, I think you can look at fencing and use that to your advantage for deer hunting too. So the way that they've designed some of their fencing, we've identified a few of the pinch points that then creates. Mm-hmm. Because deer are very lazy a lot of times. Like they're gonna take the path of least resistance, because if you study the brain and neuroscience, like they're just like us. Like we're gonna use our survival instincts first, and then our intellect second. So we're gonna use our survival instincts first, and then if I feel like I'm safe, then I'll start discerning and making other decisions there.
Hierarchy of needs.
Exactly, off of preference. And so that's another thing that we've learned that is kind of cool. Like I have 2 or 3 ideas rolling in my head right now of where I want to set cameras, leading up like July, August, September to see, because I have a theory that these deer are using a certain like 2 or 3 different pathways to access the 2 bedding areas. And I'm like, that's going to be the spot that we kill the biggest deer in the county. Because if you find the path in between 2 giant bedding areas, gold.
Checkmate.
It's gold. Mm-hmm. But the advantage to that is that these guys, a decade back, built these fields to the point where their cattle could graze as much as they could, because they were trying to maximize their land. It's like I've got 100 acres and I've got, a couple river systems running through it. I've got probably 85 acres of grazable fields. You better believe I'm using all 85 of that. Mm-hmm. And so you take these fences as tight as you can get them, And so then you can start really thinking about, okay, if this is an open field with a lot of exposure, that mature buck is going to try to stay out of the exposure. So, man, use fences to your advantage, especially if you get a property that's been utilized or fenced before.
I'll keep that in mind one day when I get my property. I can't wait.
Me too. I can't wait to get that 1 acre.
Yeah, I know. You want to split it?
I don't know if I can afford it, bro.
So when is, obviously you leave your jaw on the floor the first time you see the buck you name the king? When is that, and what's the interaction like between the two of you when you got to get a picture of that deer?
Fist fight like mine.
Yeah.
Mike is like, you going to Colorado again?
Yeah.
No, it wasn't
So
like that.
we knew that a couple deer like that existed based on the spring.
A couple?
We don't know.
Allegedly,
yeah.
Okay.
So we found a shed that I believe is still his left side. No, excuse me, his right side. We found a shed, me and a biologist that was in charge of some of the habitat management that was a part of the conservation easement. We're walking this ground back in March, and he found that. And, I mean, when I saw that, I was like, okay, well, I am interested even more in this property. And so from there...
You probably planted it.
That's what I'm saying.
He's like, look at that.
I genuinely thought, because I've shown y'all the picture now, this shed is in 5 foot off the ground in a tree. I've never seen a shed like that.
Yeah, that would be a really weird plant. You know, it's like, I'm going to plant this shed, but I'm going to do it head high.
He would have fooled me.
Yeah.
Hey, he could have planted it, but the dude's on the ground, so he was real. So now I can confirm it. So the crazy thing about this is we didn't know that this deer existed until I saw him in person on the first time.
You'd never had a trail cam picture of him?
Never.
Well, no, we had a trail cam.
No, we
picture
didn't.
Earlier that day, the same day.
Okay, fair. So October 28th, it had been raining for the past 12 hours. Mike and I were planning the weekend, and we had picked our spots. I had picked a specific food plot. He had picked another spot that he wanted to hunt, and we were just waiting for the rain to stop. And so about noon is what the radar said. And so we'd gotten out to the property at about 11. And my dad is the greatest man on earth, but he is not necessarily into bow hunting. But he loved the fact that we invited him out to hang out and chat before we went to hunt. So we were just shooting the breeze, and Mike and I were both chomping at the bit because we're like, okay, the rain stopped. These deer are on their feet now. We got to be in the stand. And so we're visiting. He had brought breakfast, so we were having breakfast and just, again, shooting the breeze. And finally, we were like, okay, it's probably about time where we head out, and we need to get in the stand. And we checked Moultrie Mobile. Shout out.
Sponsors.
Right.
Get that.
We need that. We'll help you guys recruit more. So we checked the app one more time, and I remember showing my phone to Mike, and I was like, what is that? And so what you can do in Moultrie is that you can set a test image to go off at a specific time every single day so that your cameras stay active. And you can make sure they're angled right. And then about 75 yards in the background of a test image, not a triggered image, a test image, there is a freaking giant. And we see his right side, which is right side. He's a traditional 8-point. He is truly just an 8-point with brows and then just stuff all over that 8-point. Mm-hmm. So when I see this deer from the right side, I'm like, that's the biggest 8-point I knew existed. It looked like somebody transplanted an Iowa deer and dropped him into Northeast Texas.
That old Seek 1 stuff,
Yeah, exactly.
A little suburban action.
Yeah. And I was like, there is no way that is a deer here. And so the best part about it was that he showed up in the plot that I had called the night before. So at this point, it's game on. So, I mean, we all bomb into our spots and we try to
Love you, Glenn.
Yeah. But we got to go.
We got to go.
Love you, Dad, but we got to go. And so we bomb into our spots, and like I think I army crawled for about 400 yards to get to the spot. No, I'm kidding, but I got in there as silently as possible. We hung our stuff, and then at about 5:30 in the afternoon, this is before time change, I had seen two little like 6-8 point bucks that were just playing with each other and like kind of.
They were playing with each other?
They really
That's
were.
Crazy.
Physically, yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, they were clinking antlers and bedding down with each other. Like seriously, they were just like married up. It's weird. And then I saw probably 5 does that were just like making their way through the food plot. We had a decent amount of production in this food plot. This is our biggest one. We had planted probably 3 or 4 acres. And then this was very strategic. It was along a creek path that separated our big ag is what we called it from our like micro food plots. And then we had 3 or 4 feeders that were spread out across of about 370 acres. So what I thought would happen was that the big ag, which was about 30 acres of wheat, would give them their evening, like night after dark food source.
Destination food source.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So safety food. And then what our hope was is that we would pull them right before dark onto these like smaller,
Little like a staging plot almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what our thought was. And so this was our probably most effectively planted, but it was big. And so what I think we need to figure out moving forward is if we're going to plant, like we're going to expand that to about 9 acres now. So if we're going to go from, 1 acre to 9, like how do you make that huntable while also providing the tonnage that's going to be able to sustain a large number of deer and to hold them as tightly as possible? Because if you have a couple of really good bedding areas, the only missing equation is they don't have to leave if you provide the food. So that's the next objective now that we have established a sanctuary or 2 sanctuaries that we're not going to touch. So about 5:30 rolls around and a really good mature doe walks out, and I was like legitimately, I was like, if she comes pretty close, like I may take her because she's
Knowing that one buck is on your property though.
Yeah, knowing that he was there.
What was it in October?
Yeah, this is October 28th. So knowing that like this is a unicorn buck that showed up on a test image, like randomly, I was like, man, I hope he's like in the area still, but I doubt it. And so she's like probably 60, 70, 80 yards away. And I'm just observing, watching her. I took a couple videos. And then the cool thing about it is the bucks were like playing underneath me. Like is wild. And
Patty cake?
Pretty much, yeah. All sorts of weird stuff. And then they got on the does and they ran them around a little bit. So I figured that October 28th, that ruts, maybe pre-ruts started. So then on my far left-hand corner, like literally the farthest part of the plot, it ended up being like 95 yards away. I glanced over there and I was just like glassing field edges and I see something that looked like antlers and I like locked in and I just held it there and then it started moving. And I was like, oh man, if I can see antlers at 95 yards away, like we're good.
Yep.
Something that I would be interested in seeing. And so he just stands there. And I always heard, like you brought up staging, I always heard that mature deer always sit on an edge and they just observe. And that deer sat there for what felt like 30 minutes. It was probably only 5, but he just sat there and looked and looked and looked and looked. And finally he starts working his way out. And then he's fully exposed, like he's in the food plot and he's like 90 yards away. And so I've got some good videos on my phone where I'm like fully zoomed in and he just looks like a crazy 8-point. Like giant.
What's going through your mind at this point?
I'm like, how in the world do I get this deer from 95 yards to
Were you scrolling
bow
your sight
range?
down already to 90?
I'm like ready to launch. No, I knew that because of what I'd seen the behavior of these younger deer, I knew that it wasn't probably full rut for mature deer. I knew it was probably pre-rut. I was like, well, it's now 5:45 in the afternoon. I have very little shooting light left. I'm going to try a grunt call. So I pull a grunt call out and I hit it once and he like looks up. No interest. And then I'm like, well, dang it. So I'm like, well, maybe I'll try it one more time. So I give it like a minute or so, and then I hit it again, and he like really shows interest this time, and he like takes a few steps toward it, but then the whole time he's like looking back at this doe. So at this point, I think that maybe he had already kind of, paired off with this doe, and he was like, man, I don't know what else I'd be looking for at this point. I'm the guy here. Why would I go chasing
I'm that guy, pal.
Exactly. So that, all of us trying to insert our own thought process into this deer who probably is not thinking about that at all. He's probably thinking, okay, there's something that's trying to threaten me. Like, I'm just going to go kick his butt and come back to my doe. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, all right, what would it look like to try it one more time? So I hit it like as hard as I can and like hold it for like 5 seconds. And sure enough, he's like, all right, that's enough. And he starts following his way like down the edge of this food plot. And now looking back, I would have cut it differently because, and this is another like management piece of it, is like depending on where you've chosen for your stand location, which I know we're all like mobile saddle guys, but if you have an idea of where you're going to be sitting, if you can cut your food plots to where, because they're always going to love field edges. Like, I don't know if y'all have seen that, but like all the deer that I've hunted, like they love the edges.
They're edge creatures.
Yeah.
Totally. And so if you can plan how they're going to be angled to you to be able to like actually shoot it in the position that you'd want to shoot it, cut the field that way. So we cut the field to where it was kind of like, it was angled like this, and it was like curved to me. And so he was coming toward me.
Like straight on.
Yeah, kind of bent. And then based on where I angled the grunt, I kind of wanted him to think that it was over the top of my left-hand shoulder, so he'd come in broadside because the wind was blowing it this way. So I wanted him to come right here. But what happened is when he got to the edge of the field, he was like, well, I'm not going to come further this way. I think I heard it that way. And so he's about 35, maybe 37, and he's about to go into the woods. And all I know at this point is this is the biggest deer I've ever seen and may ever see again. And so I'm like, well, we're going to throw an arrow at it and see what happens. And so you want to grab that scapula? Yeah. Oh. So Micah made me this once the story concluded, but I lined up, pulled my arrow back. I honestly felt pretty calm. The second time I saw him, I was freaking out. But the first time, I felt like I was really, really calm and pretty well at peace. But I let the arrow fly, and I felt amazing about the shot. Like, I thought this thing was dead for sure. And that was the outcome. Now, we didn't know this.
Not dead, just in case anybody was wondering.
Yeah. So October 28th did not kill the deer.
So when he shed that scapula and you guys found that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a shed. It's a shed. So I put an arrow through this thing. Felt awesome about the shot. But what I think happened is he was quartered to me. And then, you know how you want that front leg
Forward.
I didn't wait for that, or I couldn't wait for that. I genuinely don't know. So either I did not wait for it, or I could not wait for it because of the tree line. Mm-hmm. But I sent an arrow and buried it in the scapula, and he lived. Not
good penetration at all.
When if again, I have some data right there that tells me what penetration I got. Mm-hmm. But if you were going to ask me, like, from the stand what happened, what I saw happen was the arrow went in, and I could see the broadhead sunk, stayed, did not pass through. Like, I knew it didn't pass through because I could see the arrow and the fletching, like, sticking out as he was running off. But then I heard a crash. So I was like, this is great. It's great. I just killed a deer in my life. And I don't know what text I sent you, but he was across the farm, and
you had sent me a text. So I had shot a doe that night.
Same day?
Yeah.
I didn't remember
Don't
that.
do this, but I shot a doe at 60 yards that night.
God,
that's right. You were on the wheat field. That's right. Yeah.
Don't do what I did. But he had texted me and was like, the buck is in the field, because we had obviously been together at noon and seen that trail cam footage, and he was like, the buck is in the field. And I was like, well, did you shoot him? And there was like this dead silence, for like 40 minutes. And then he was like, I shot him. That's all I got. And I was like, I don't give two F's about this doe at this point. All I cared about was like going and retrieving this buck, right? So I like climb down as fast as I can. We go and sit at the trucks. What he missed, or what he didn't say, was it was raining like an SOB that night. Like, it was raining ridiculously hard. So
once we got back to the truck.
Yeah, so like we knew the rain was coming in. We had hunted all evening long. He came back to the truck, and I had mentioned earlier, I'm pretty impatient, like when retrieving a deer. Like, I always wait at least 30 minutes, but I can be impatient. But when he came back, I was like, we're going to wait. We're going to wait at least an hour. Well, the thing is a rain was rolling in. So he had shot that buck, told me kind of, like what he just said was he got a little bit of, he got some penetration. The arrow was sticking out along with the fletching, but that he hit it in a good spot. And we were like, okay, let's give it an hour and a half and see what happens. Well, then like 30 minutes later, rain rolled in. And when I say rain, I mean like the rain of all rains. I mean, it was pouring. And so we're sitting in the truck, and I was like, we need to go now. Like, we don't have a choice at this point. Like, everything that we were going to see is about to be washed away. We've got to go now. So we go out there and we start looking, and of course we comb the woods for a good while and don't really see a whole lot. And then we come back to the trucks and start game planning. And then that's when we really start basically start thinking about dog trackers and all that aspect of it. And we've talked about it on the other podcast, but basically, he texted a few people, I texted a few people, and they all kind of recommended the same guy, Ricky Loftus. We called him, and then he was like, just back out, take a beat, go home, get some sleep. And next day was Sunday. Yeah. So I knew that I was gonna hunt at that point. Obviously, Jake had thought he'd killed his buck, so he wasn't gonna hunt. So we met out there that morning with Ricky. Obviously either one of us didn't hunt, and we looked for a while. Ricky's a great dude, has a great dog. We got out there and looked for a while. And unfortunately just couldn't find the deer. But that evening I went and hunted the stand that I eventually killed my buck at. And I ended up taking
you killed a doe that night.
Yeah, I ended up taking a doe. We hadn't hunted that stand at all. Ended up shooting a doe.
It was on the opposite side of the property. Yeah.
But
ended up great.
Yeah. But
yeah, I mean, obviously October 28th will always be like the day where you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, like you replay it in your mind. And, what I've noticed is I'll invent these stories of what happened or what didn't happen, or it's like, oh yeah, maybe he did have one more step that he could have taken, and then if I'd made the exact same shot, it would have been perfect. But like, what I tried to tell myself is like, you made the exact right decision.
Yeah.
In the moment that you were in it, let it be.
Didn't work out.
Yeah, it didn't work out.
10 out of 10 guys would have made the shot that you made.
Yeah.
10 out of 10.
Yeah, and so
most of them even wouldn't have even hit it that good. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so at that point, you go into this like mental trance of like, am I ever going to see this deer again? We've got the shed from the spring. We've put all this work in. We've been so smart all the way through October. Like, what's November going to look like? And so he gives us probably 6 or 7 days where he just disappears, which no doubt he's got an arrow that's probably an inch from his heart. If you can see the broadhead's like literally sticking out, like the heart's like close, really close. And so you hit any aspect of that, and it's like he's gonna bleed out eventually. Like maybe maybe it's a day, but he's dead. So he's obviously very injured, and then we don't see him for another, I don't know, I think it was 6 or 7 days.
It's about a week.
And then we get him on the same side of the property, but like the far corner of the property. And he's on this like little pinch point that you designed. The funny part about this is I had this whole setup probably 50 or 75 yards closer to the river, and then he convinced me. He's like, dude, I don't know why, but like it just seems like it should sit right here. And he mowed it and he set it up, and it's perfect for a north wind, like so awesome. And then the river also sucks all your thermals back down, so the evenings north are just like dynamite.
Yeah, you can kind of sit that stand and basically be like, I could freaking dance in this stand if this wind is right, and nothing is going to see me or care that I'm here.
That's nice.
And we have a really nice access too, because there was an old cattle fence that kept them, off the river edge.
Yep.
And you can actually drop back behind the cattle fence and walk behind the fence. So there's almost like a visibility shield too. So what I ended up doing is over the next month, I actually accessed from the neighbors, and then I would park over here and I would cut behind that cattle fence here, and I would walk this way and then get up into our stand and never hit the trail that the deer were used.
Mm-hmm. So what's your neighbor situation like? I don't remember if we covered that or not.
We haven't, and honestly, I have had such awesome luck at that property getting to know my neighbors. Here, bad, if I'm being honest. Like, I've had trespassers, I've had people that are like kind of shifty. I've had some developers. I've had an apartment complex that I've had to deal with. Like, our first property, like, just, it's a wash. Like, it's really, really tough. Like, there's nobody I could call and be like, hey, I shot a deer. I need to go retrieve it. Are you cool with that? Like, I wouldn't even know who to call, honestly. Here. Over there, I know all of our neighbors, which is awesome. In fact, I had some rock brought in, and I had a neighbor. I texted two of my neighbors, and I was like, hey, I don't have my tractor here. It would take me, 2 hours to get it here. I thought the guy was going to be able to spread this rock for me. Like, I had both of them within 5 minutes were like, hey, I'm available. I'll come spread your rock for you. And, that kind of stuff. Like, I just think that if we're all in this for the same reasons, try to engage with your neighbors, because at some point you're going to shoot a deer that's going to go on their property.
100%.
And you're
vice versa.
Yeah, you're going to need to retrieve that
We're not
deer.
going to let them come onto this property.
That's right.
100%.
It's our deer, But yeah, I think if we're all at this for the same reason, which is like, number one, I think we say this all the time, but we're trying to get into creation, to enjoy creation, and to appreciate more of the creator. Like, that's what this is all about anyway. So it's like, sometimes you have to be like, yes, I understand private property rules here, but if you're friendly with your neighbors, like, I just believe that's the proper play. And
how friendly are you being? Like, are you exchanging those pictures with them, or
we're not
that friendly?
We're not exchanging trail cams. No,
that's probably for the best.
Yeah,
friendly
for
but
the best.
Acquaintance.
Yeah, you're not going to see my Moultrie Mobile.
No, casual
shout out.
Yeah, there you
We're going
go.
to have to edit so much out of this.
So when I came up, I think I was headed to my family's Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
We stopped there for a night, Lauren and I did, and stayed.
You got so lucky. Can we just take a moment to say
absolutely.
that this man right here is the luckiest man on earth?
When you're
Continue.
hot, when you're hot, you're hot.
Hey, you
you're
had
hot, you're hot.
You had an amazing
you had a heater
23.
This season, yeah.
23.
I was one stone away from the Infinity Stones.
Yeah.
I needed a Thanos' thing. Yeah, but no, we're coming up through. Lauren and I are headed to Thanksgiving in Oklahoma. We stop, stay a night with you guys. We obviously go out to the property. I don't know, like 1 o'clock that day, like hang out. Micah shoots at a duck on a pond. I mean,
That was fun.
Yeah.
Dude, I hit it.
Yeah,
I hit it.
He did.
No, he didn't hit it.
No, I did.
I nicked it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I touched it.
So, backstory: Babcock and I have known each other for a few years, but our wives are best friends.
Roommates in college.
Yeah, just like a long history, and so we met through them. Obviously,
And they've dated now.
yeah,
behind the scenes.
exactly. So now that now Christian and I have dated for many
Few
years
years now.
behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they stopped to say hi, and then I'm like, well, why would we just like hang out here? Like, why don't we get out in the woods, So we show them the first property, and we enjoy ourselves and have fun. And then I'm like, dude, you want to come see the other one?
Mike is out there.
Yeah, let's all go. So we head out there, and then Micah, I will give all credit to him, all credit. he buys this like Walmart
Flambeau.
decoy.
No, it's a nice decoy.
Still flambeau.
Yeah, but it's a nice decoy. It looks legit. Yeah.
Okay, so it's so funny. Like the funniest part is that you have the text thread screenshotted on when I was just trashing this strategy. just like this is never going to work.
So basically what happened is they showed up, and I was telling Jake, I was like, bro, there's a lot of things that I've been wanting to try out
that I won't
but
do myself.
I don't necessarily want to do myself.
Let's make him do it.
I was like, but he's guaranteed to kill a doe in this field if we put him in this field.
I've already shot $3. I'm like, I don't care. I don't
Throw it up at the party,
And I was
baby.
like, so he's guaranteed to kill a doe if we put him in this field. I always see doe in this field. I was like, but I just got this decoy. I hunted with it the other day. I was like, I think it'll work in this field, but I don't want to try it out. I was like, so let's let Christian try it out. And so when Christian and Jake got there, we were all kind of talking about game plans and like formulating what we were going to do. And I was like, hey, Christian, do you want to hunt over a decoy tonight? And credit to you, you were just like, yeah, man, I don't care. And I was like, okay. I was like, so you don't mind? You were like, no, I think that'd be cool. Plus, it would be like really cool film if I killed one over it. And I was like, all right, cool. And in my mind, I was like, yes. I was like, because I spent all this money on this stupid thing, and I've only used it twice. And so I was like, okay, awesome.
Did it have a name?
Yeah. No, we didn't at that point. We did not have a name at that point. No, not at that point, because I hadn't.
I would have said yes,
I had
Gaylord.
hunted it with one antler, but like we had not all collectively named it. And so we all load up in the truck. We all drive out to the field. We show him what tree we think he should sit in. I set up this decoy, and again, credit to Christian. He is so just like go with the flow. Like, I'm just having fun with it, bro. Like, this is great. I'm in the woods. I'm enjoying my buddies. Like, I whatever you guys want to do, I'm cool with it, right? And again, it's like in November. So it's in November in Texas at a really good property where we know where the deer are traveling. So he's more so just like, I trust you guys. And so I set up this deer. We take one antler off of it, and I think Christian was like,
okay,
"Oh,
why though? Explain why."
Okay, so
this is the theory where I'm like,
no. So I had listened to a podcast with Dudley, and Dudley was talking about how he hunted with decoys with just one antler because it's less, or it's more approachable to other bucks. Like, it's like I could whoop that dude's butt because he only has one antler versus having two antlers.
Sure.
So I was just
It
like,
checks out.
again, I was just like, I haven't done it yet.
Well, I remember because you had the antlers. You're like 1 or 2. You're like, I'm thinking 1. I was like, cool.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
sure,
Yeah. So I was just like, okay, we're going to go 1 because I heard this on a podcast that Dudley did. And obviously Dudley's way more badass than any of us.
Yeah.
So I was like, let's just do it. So we did it. And again, you were just like, yeah, cool, whatever. And so I think at that point you were like Elliot. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
Like
yeah,
Elliot.
like Elliot. So we all started
Elliot.
calling him Elliot at that point. And so we set him up. And honestly, it was a great hunt. All of us had such a good hunt that night.
That was one of my best hunts all year.
Yeah.
I saw like 10 doe. I saw a really
buck.
awesome 12 point
You
that I'm like,
saw a 12 point you
that
should have
dude'll-
shot. I mean,
that-
at this point, it's great that you didn't shoot him, but
hey, I'd already seen the king,
Yeah,
so I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm not shooting
yes,
anything
it
but
was
him.
great that you passed him.
pass.
But then I shot one of our target bucks, I passed on one of our target bucks that night,
Yeah.
and then
Where
all
were
of
you
a
sitting?
sudden,
Were you on the west side?
I was at Raymond.
Okay.
I guess I say
West
I
side.
passed on him, but he was at like 60 yards, so
Yeah.
it was really iffy. But then you,
Well, I remember because it was kind of warm, a little warm that day. I was wearing this sweater and like a t-shirt.
sweating your
And-
butt off.
Yeah, and I'm sitting in that tree, and I didn't even get as high as you guys because I only brought 3 steps. So like I had to cut some like thorn away for me to get up there. And I remember being like, God, I am skylined in this tree. Like, I'm not gonna. If something comes out, I'm gonna have to draw before they get out on the field. But I hear it's like 4:30 in here. I was like, no way. Looked over to the right, and I just see beams. I was like, oh, no way. And so I like grab my bow, and he comes in, and he gets to the right in the edge of the field, and I'm watching him, and he's scraping just. He hit it 3 or 4 times, and to me it was like a, hey, dude, you better move on, or I'm gonna come out in that field, and we're about to deal with this. And he steps out on the field. I mean, ears just go back. And he starts hitting. I've never seen it in person before. That sideways walk, and he's like, He gets to about. I draw on him before he's even out on the field because I'm like, I saw that neck. I was like, oh, geez, that's a beast. He comes in. I draw the whole time. I'm following him the whole time. He gets 6 or 7 yards from the decoy, And the dude's like, ooh, there's like, and obviously we had 3 had stand there, and you were wearing gloves, but we weren't. When we were touching the decoy, he's like, ooh. And he like locks up and he starts to backpedal, and I'm like, now or never. And shot him.
Drilled him.
Yeah, drilled him. He runs 100 yards and falls over. I'm like, dude, it's my year.
Dude, this is
I
couldn't believe it.
No, I was like,
The
2 hours in a stand.
But the crazy thing about that is, like, in the same, like, probably 15-minute span, I'd probably seen 10 deer, and you and I were hunting probably 150 yards apart.
Yeah.
Like, I had seen that same 12 that came, well, not same 12, but a different 12 that came in front of me. You're hunting over here, and it came in front of me, looped around me, and I thought he was going to come hit your decoy. And
I never saw that deer.
In that same time frame, he's hunting, or he's just like chasing does out in the wheat field in front, like behind me, and then you're in the front.
What did the text thread say though? Before all that happened, we were all texting about the fact that we set up a decoy, and we're like, basically, if this happens, it'll be epic.
I just thought it was going to be a joke. I was like, you put a decoy out there with one antler. Yeah. I'm like, this is going to be.
That happens on Midwest whitetail.
I'm telling you, sometimes it just works out in your favor. And, I don't know if we're going to get to it, but the very next weekend it worked for me.
This is what Jake said.
We're going to get to it.
Jake said, I love how us hunters are always experts. Yeah, man, put that decoy out. That's the biggest one you can find. Yeah, it should look like a cow, but only put one side of the antlers on. That way the other deer know they have a chance. Yeah, that'll work, end quote. And then Micah said, geniuses.
And it freaking worked.
So basically, we did that exact same thing.
Freaking worked.
And he dropped a deer.
All I remember is you texted "big buck down," and because we were all texting each other like pictures of deer we were seeing because it was a very active
only
evening.
Deer I had seen.
And you were like "big buck down,"
1 for 1.
and I was like, "This lies, huh?" I was like, "There's no way," and you were like, "No, seriously, big mature 10," and I was like, "Holy crap!"
Yeah, what was crazy about that buck is when you're measuring forms for deer, like they measure at the base of the neck, right? My taxidermist measured the base of the neck, and like when you get above 23 inches, you're starting to get into like small elk forms, and it was like 23 and a half on that neck. And he was like, dude, this is a big, he asked me where it was from, and I said, Texas. And he's like, are you serious? I said, yeah. He said, this is a huge neck. And when we caped him out, I remember doing it on your truck out there, it was meat in the neck.
Yeah.
Like there was obviously some swelling, but it was like the dude just, those kids in high school, they just don't have a neck. Yes. Like he was one of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was like that. And I remember
140 pounds.
When I had my taxidermist cape him out, he got the face off of it and he was breaking that jaw. And I remember seeing the 4th tooth. Yeah. And I remember I was talking to my taxidermist because he likes to do the jaw aging, not the cementum aging. And he said, this is a 4.5-year-old deer. That's what he told me.
No way.
And I was like, why is his neck so big? 23 plus. And he said, I don't know. He said, this looks like a young deer to me. And so I was like, I had mixed up feelings. Huge body, huge neck, teeth didn't show age.
Huge body.
Yeah.
Huge body.
Yeah.
But even his antlers and the way his behaviors, he just screamed old deer. Like even, I remember one camera video we had over at Creekside that we saw him like walking and like his behavior always showed like age, like just slow, methodical, like just a very dominant behavior. And then if you see a deer behave that way to a decoy, like some of them are not gonna challenge a decoy like that.
Right.
So again, all the signs pointed to me 6+.
Yeah, and that we get the I started doing something this year, the cementum aging, and it's the front 2 incisors. They send it to a lab, they cut them in half, and then they read the ring similar to like a ring on a tree. And so our buddy Warren had told me to do that. I'd never done it before, and so we did that this year. I sent him off, and I got the results. What was it, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
And I remember looking it up. My first thought was, I pray to God this deer's not 4.5. It's like, this is the biggest 4.5-year-old that I've ever seen body-wise. And I opened it up, and it said 5.5. And based on it's so interesting on the tooth wear, because based on the tooth wear, if you would have handed that jaw to anyone, not showing them the neck, not showing them the deer, they would have said that's a 4.5-year-old deer. That the cementum on it, it was It was a 5-year-old.
At the Hunter's Advantage, we live by the KISS slogan.
You were not supposed to tell them that.
No, I meant we like to keep it simple, stupid. All jokes aside, Exodus is the definition of keeping it simple. Let's say you aren't really sure what arrow setup you should run. The Exodus Arrow Builder will help you build the right arrows for your exact setup.
Or if you don't have time to change those trail cam batteries in the dog days of summer, Exodus has a great selection of cell cameras and regular trail cameras, and if you pair them with one of their solar panels, you'll be set for a long while. I've shot over a dozen deer and a big old black bear in Saskatchewan with these arrows, and I trust them to fly right and get the job done. And they have something for everyone with the Exodus NIS micro diameter arrows or the Exodus MMTs.
So if you want to save money on Exodus arrows, cell cameras, or anything else they got on their website, make sure to check out ExodusOutdoorGear.com and use code HA10 for 10% off.
Once again, that's ExodusOutdoorGear.com, and make sure to use code HA10 for 10% off at checkout. Now let's get back to the podcast.
That buck that I shot. So there was no way in y'all's mind. What did you end up guessing on that deer? Oh, you got your mic down. What did you end up guessing on that buck for age? You said what?
For sure, I was certain 7.5.
What did you think?
I think you texted us, and I think I said 6.5.
6.5. See, this is why when I try to classify deer, they're like, how old do you think this deer is? I'm always like 5.5 at least. Like that. If I think it's mature, I'm like, I don't know past that. Because we've had our taxidermists do the jaw aging, and, you know, you get to a certain point where you're like, could be 6, could be 9. You know, that's why that cementum aging is so interesting to me.
So will you explain what cementum is?
Nope. Don't know what that is.
Try to Google it, can't spell it. All right, next question.
Yeah, I said 6.5.
So is it like the inside of the tooth?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Cut it in half, and then they're looking, I don't know. We use deerage.com. There's a couple other different services, but yeah, it's really, really neat.
Hashtag ad.
But I actually got my last buck of the year, that 7x5 that I shot.
Yeah.
I got him age, and I got the age back today.
Today?
Yeah, today.
2.5?
1.5. Yeah, he was 5.5.
Okay.
So I shot 3 5.5-year-olds.
Wow, that's awesome.
Nice.
And a 4.5-year-old. The one I ended up killing with my recurve was 4.5.
Nice.
So
Couldn't let one get 6?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a little selfish of you.
yeah.
So what do you think about that? Just to like break pattern for a moment. When do you feel like deer top out?
Oh.
And are you happy with 3 5.5-year-olds?
I am. I think a lot of people, make assumptions like, oh, I shot a nice buck. This is at least a 5.5-year-old. I think what we tend to do, and what Warren was telling us too, is we tend to think a deer is a year older than it actually is.
Yeah.
If not
I think that's what we do. We
Probably
see a
more.
4.5-year-old.
2.
I do.
That's me.
I think we see the average 4.5-year-old, and we're like, he's big, he looks mature, he's got to be 5.5, right? And the reality is like I thought there was no doubt in my mind out of one of those 5.5-year-olds I shot that one of them was going to be 6. None of them were. None of them were at all. And they ranged in body size. There was that one I shot on opening day was probably only a 150-pound deer. He was not a big deer, but he's 5.5. So I don't know.
So how do you?
And also to answer your question about the antler potential, there's research by the MSU Deer Lab that the whitetail buck sports its best antler potential through ages 5.5 and 6.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, on average. And if every buck's individual, I wonder, would that buck have got bigger? Would he have got smaller? You never know.
Yeah.
He could have got smaller significantly.
Yeah. And I also wounded him too.
So he probably wouldn't have even looked like the same
That's
deer
a good
next year.
point.
Yeah. So if you think about it, what plays into antler size versus body size? What is his like innate intelligence prioritize? So if you hit a deer like I hit him, and put an arrow an inch from his heart, like there is going to be extreme like biomechanical changes that he's going to have to accommodate through, and he did. In fact, when I shot him on the last day, he didn't show much like issue at all. Like biomechanically, he was moving like very normally. Mm-hmm. But how much, I'm just curious, and we'll never know the answer to that, but how much does, injury play into what a buck turns into? And I think that's the problem with all these like research labs that are taking place in only studying antlers. It's like, how does body and damage and injury and like actual like normal occurrence in a wild buck, how does that influence antlers?
Well, I can tell you the one I shot on opening day, he had a pit in his jaw that had burst, and he was missing his back 5 teeth, and it looked like a little U.
Wow.
Completely gone. And that same side was a weird side. He had that floppy side. Like, he had a really good 5-point side, and on this side, it looked like you took that side, shrunk it about 30%, and then rolled it over on his head a little bit. And it was corresponding with that injury. You hear that a lot, right? Like a buck gets injured and the other side of the same side, or the other side gets effed up. It's very, very interesting, though. It's very interesting. So I shoot that buck. Y'all obviously continue to hunt. Micah, you have some really good hunts right after that, right? During that time period, are you guys still getting pictures of the king buck every once in a while you were hunting?
Yeah, I mean, like, we were getting definitely. Okay, let me back up. We weren't necessarily getting photos of the king. It had gone like, what was it, like a 2-week dead period, and so it wasn't like an agreement, but it was more so like I'm going to hunt, but we really, really didn't want to shoot anything until that buck was dead. Right? It would have been really weird to shoot something knowing that buck was still running around out there, not on the ground. And even though that he had already shot it and it was kind of like his buck per se, it still would have been weird, right? Like knowing that there's a 200-inch buck running around in the woods for me to shoot anything else. But then there was like this 2-week dead period in November where we didn't see him. And so I had just finished I had taken off. I'd take a week off every year in November, like my vacation. And I had just finished up 8 days straight of not killing a deer, not killing a doe, not killing a buck.
I remember that. Yeah.
I spent some time in Missouri. I had missed a nice buck in Missouri. And so like it was like this long span where it was just like, why have I not shot a deer? I already killed 2 doe that season, but it was just like, why have I not killed a deer? This is so like frustrating and aggravating. I had actually passed the buck you shot.
He's bragging.
No. It's not a brag, because when we get to the end of this, I had passed the buck that you shot. He walked right under me at like 8 yards, and it was just like this weird thing, like where I just hadn't like capitalized. And then you came into town. We set the decoy up. You killed that buck. It was a really cool thing. So then when I got back from Missouri, I was like, you know what? That decoy worked for Christian. I'm going to set this decoy up. And so we have this nice buck that we call Funky Buck. We had both agreed not to shoot him this year because we think he's about 3.5 years old. We think he's pretty young. But
honestly, this test may reveal that he's a yearling.
Probably 10. Might be 10 and a half.
Yeah. So
one or the other. He's either a yearling or he's 10.
I set the decoy up. Like I had basically Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to hunt this property. Friday was great. I saw a bunch of deer. Saturday, set this decoy up. Had lots of really cool encounters, but then
and you're on the wheat fields that he killed.
The one
his buck.
One over from where he killed it. Yeah,
a little bit
the
more
middle field.
medial.
Yeah. And so it was like later in the evening, and I just start hearing that crunch or whatever. And I look over to my right, and I see Funky Buck walking up. And he's just like, it's pure, like, prime rut time at this point. So he's just, like, flared up on his back, like all his fur standing up or all his hair standing up. Just looks like a giant, even though we know he's 3.5. But he's probably like 145-inch, 150-inch.
He's an awesome deer.
Yeah, really,
like
really
awesome.
cool deer. But he's
I don't
young.
know if he's 145. Like, I think he'd probably score close to 160. All the trash he's got on one side.
He's a big buck, but he's young. Like, he's so young. But he starts walking up. And I'm just like, I'm not worried about him. And then all of a sudden I realize, you know what? He is 18 yards away from me. I am shooting this deer. So I draw back, but he's walking hard.
Against our agreement, for the record.
I know.
Those 8 days took a toll.
Dude, it was so rough. And so he's doing the sideways walk you were talking about towards this decoy. And I'm basically yelling at this deer, like mapping him. Just I cannot get him to stop.
Is that Instagram reel?
Yes.
Okay.
Not fazed by me at all.
Yeah, doesn't know you're there.
Doesn't even phase him. And then next thing you know, he just rams right into this decoy, busts him into two pieces, takes off sprinting, and then he stops in the field behind me and then just looks back and then just walks away. And I was like, thank you, Lord. I just almost broke an agreement that we made. I was like, thank you, Jesus.
Because that's our new target. Like that's gonna be 2024 target deer.
And so I was just like, thank you, Jesus, right?
Yeah, thank you.
So he goes off, but it was a great hunt. It was like that was like as good of a hunt as you could have without shooting a deer. It was so much fun. And then the next day, set up in another spot across the way, and it was so funny because I was telling Jake, I was just like, we had only hunted this spot one other time. And it was the same day he had shot his buck, and I shot that doe that night. That's the only time. There's really no food plot. Like, we tried to plant one, but nothing came up. There was no feeder. There was nothing. But it was just kind of like a travel corridor and a spot that we mowed in, like, an old, like, field. But it was just in a good area. And so I was like, man, the wind is perfect for this spot. And it's, like, kind of weird for everywhere else. I was like, I don't know why. But everything is telling me to hunt this spot. We didn't have a camera in this spot. We don't know what's traveling. I was like, but I think I need to be there. And, Jakey's like, okay, cool, whatever. Like, that sounds great.
You want to sit in our worst spot? That's cool.
Yeah, exactly. He was just like, whatever, dude. I don't know why you're feeling that way, but go for it. So I sat there that night. I set up a decoy in this. It's like a micro food plot with nothing that's growing in it. Set up a decoy in it. It's like half an acre. And we get later into the evening, and I just start hearing, like, the and I look over, and, like, the rest of it, it's like, I call it CRP, but it's just, like, 10-foot, legitimately,
native
10-foot grown-up crap. And if you've ever hunted, like, in Texas, if I say cuckleburs, like, you know what cuckleburs are. So they're basically 10-foot tall cuckleburs everywhere. And he is just walking through it and just thrashing it. I mean, just walking through this stuff, coming towards the field in a path that I would have never expected him to take. And so I was just like, holy crap. And I'm like filming, but at this point I'm just like, screw the camera. So I've just got like it on
Get out of my way.
Yeah, I've got it on my face. Like I've got a GoPro. I just press record, but like the actual camera I'm like, screw it. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about killing this deer. And so I'm in a saddle, so I'm set up for the left side of me. Well, he's on the right side coming through all this thick stuff. So I have to, like, grab my bow and go around to the other side. And I'm just waiting for him to come out. Well, he checks up. And he checks up looking at this decoy. And when he checks up looking at this decoy, it's like a full minute. And I'm just like, and he's like facing me. And I'm like, well, I can't shoot him now. But he's not coming out into this field because his decoy's out in it. Like, what am I going to do? So I'm just, like, literally sitting there watching him. And then all of a sudden he starts to, like, quarter away because he's, like, going to turn away and start walking the opposite direction. And as he does that, I draw back and then just kind of map him. And then just what I thought I drilled him. Just, like, I thought I punched him. But, again, there's, like, this 10-foot tall cucklebur crap that I'm shooting through that he's standing in. So I thought I drilled him. He takes off running. I hear a crash. I'm like, and he's a nice, like really, really nice 10-point. And I'm like, oh.
He's got presence.
Yeah. Like,
he just looks big on the head. Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, go ahead, Jake.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, are you pretty present, like, within your sight and peep and all that?
Yeah. So like I said earlier, I don't really get buck fever. Like I got it that one time last year, but most of the time I don't get it. It's really weird. Like with bucks I don't, but with doe I do.
Old doe fever.
But so like yeah, I mean like I was like locked in. I mean like literally I just like locked the pin in. I mean like I wasn't nervous at all. I was like, okay, I drilled him. I hit him exactly where I wanted to hit him. And so I was like, okay, cool. Like, he's dead. And so I called Jake, texted Jake or whatever. And I got down about 45 minutes later and started looking for him, but I couldn't find him. But I found really, really good blood. Couldn't find him. Long story short, Jake came over. We found the arrow. The arrow was, like, covered in blood. I mean, like, textbook. You look at the arrow, and you're like, that buck's dead. Like, he's dead somewhere. And we walked about 200 yards blood trailing this thing, and we couldn't find him. So it kind of started to like trickle out, and I think I bumped him. So at that point we backed out, and I called Ricky again, and he came out the next morning, and we had the buck on the ground, like tracked down within, 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, it's fast.
So, but the funny thing is what I was saying is I passed on the buck that you shot 2 weeks prior. Yours scored 142 and some change, and I thought I made the right call passing on it. The buck that I shot was 142 and some change. So literally waited 2 weeks longer, went through this whole process of going to Missouri, 8-day long vacation, all this crap for nothing.
So one in the hand is better than two in the
Dude,
bush.
I'm telling you. But it was great because you got to come out and kill a really nice buck. I killed a really nice buck. And they're so unique in their own ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like yours is not, like yours is wide, but he's more like, he has a lot more mass, right? Whereas mine is not doesn't have as much mass. He's a little bit more spindly, but he's like 23 inches wide.
Right, goes out like that.
Yeah, so they're just like drastically different bucks. But yeah, really cool, really thankful. I ended up recovering that buck with the help of Ricky 650 yards away from where I shot him.
Jeez.
Yeah, so we definitely bumped him. Because like the blood trail was just like, the next day when we were with Ricky, it was just like as clear as day. The blood trail was just like there. Like I probably didn't even need a dog, but
Never hurts.
Yeah, but I definitely bumped him, or we definitely bumped him when we were looking through the woods that day.
Well, based on the
night.
map, the way that we walked it, we ran into this one spot, or you ran into the one spot and was like, okay, we're done. The blood stops here. And then I, not knowing that, ran the same trail, stopped there. So like that part, he dropped in the creek and ran down the creek.
Yeah, the next day when we were out there in light with Ricky, we went across the creek, and then it was just like somebody painted, a red trail.
Yeah.
So it was just like it was night, and it was a blessing in disguise. Like, thank the Lord that happened to us, because we would have just continued to bump him, because it ended up, from what we think, like the coyotes got to him, so we really couldn't dissect where I hit him. But what we think is just a liver shot, like a 1/4-2 liver shot. But I think if we would have continued to find blood trail, we would have just continued to bump him, even though it was an hour and a half after.
Well, they bleed good on liver sometimes.
Yeah.
Dude, he was pouring. He was pouring. But, it is what it is. I got him. He's going to be on the wall here shortly. So
That's right.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Jake, you obviously acquired this property. You guys put in the sweat equity. I come through as a journeying hobo and luck into a buck, but you're gracious. You let other people come onto your place, shoot bucks, which is awesome. I have a couple people in my life that I owe a buck to. You're on the list, so don't worry.
Perfect.
There has to be a little bit of turmoil going on with you, right? You got 2 bucks down from buddies on the place. You've shot a 200-inch buck. Where are you at mentally at going into December? Like, are you still thinking about this buck? Like, I want to go after this buck. Where are you at that point? What are you thinking about?
I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with the king.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's all you can think about.
I don't want anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wouldn't shoot a 185 that walked across me.
It was that buck or bust.
How many tags do you get in Texas?
Say it.
How many tags do you get in Texas?
Well, certain counties are only 1 buck.
Yeah. Well,
So you
I
get
was
2
just-
bucks, but it's like 13-inch, and then one has to be a spike.
Yeah. I felt like I owed it to that deer to finish the job.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird because he would send me pictures of like nice, mature bucks while he was in the stand. And I'd be like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
And he'd just be like, well, that's not the one. I'd just be like, okay.
Can be.
All right. Yeah, like it would have been the one for me. Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? Even the night that we all 300, he passed a 12-point. That was a really nice 12-point. And we all were like, geez, that's a really nice one to pass on. But he passed it. And so it was like, I brag on him all the time to like, my other hunting buddies. Like, if there's ever a testament to patience when it comes to hunting and hunting a particular buck, like this is it.
Mm-hmm. So what did the hunt for this buck continue to look like? I know there was a stretch there where you were like literally after him every spare second of time you had, right?
Yeah, I think all of December was just just tons of time in the stand. And thankfully, I had good counsel, but like never hunted a bad wind. And I think that's what kept him, you know, in proximity. But left for our week in Kansas for Christmas, and he shows up Christmas Day.
Merry Christmas, Jake.
I mean, the most iconic picture you can think of. I mean, it's my favorite picture of him. I mean, it's awesome. He had broken off that G1 that I think is about 8 inches. We haven't recovered it yet, but we'll try to find it. But I mean, he'd already broken. But I mean, just like awesome. He looks super lean, super healthy. Like I was always, you know, when you wound a deer, like first of all, you think about like, did I just decrease that deer's trajectory for the rest of its life, you know? So for me, I was like, man, I hope this deer's healthy. I hope it can like continue to grow. And so seeing a really healthy deer, you know, Christmas Day, I was like, great. But I was also like, why did I come to Kansas for Christmas? So we're talking about like what day we're coming home. I think we ended up coming home on the 27th or 28th. And from then to January, whatever it was, 3rd or 4th, I was like, I told my wife, I was like, I just have to be out there. Like, I've got to give this every shot possible. Because I'll be honest, like there was a couple of our buddies that don't know us, but were speaking into the situation that I let influence me to the point where they were like, oh, that dude is he's going to decrease 10, 12, 30 points like next year. He's like, there's no way.
Like, you know that for sure.
Yeah. Like these guys were saying, oh, well, like you wounded it. So it could be a 180 next year. Like you've got to kill it. You've got to kill it. So you take that and you take the guilt of like, you know, not producing a heavy enough arrow set up to, you know, go through a scapula to like, oh, maybe I should have like waited another second for him to reach out and put it behind that shoulder. You know, it's like all those things just run through your mind. So you're like, the most honor I can give to that deer is that just to be in the right place as much as I can afford to be out there. I need to be out there. So that's what I did. I mean, even the last weekend, I mean, I had like a lot of opportunities before then where he was just like cruising, and we never touched the bedding areas. I think that's another testament to, you know, the patience and the planning, is we really left alone the 2 big bedding areas that we have the opportunity to own. And I don't know if we'll ever, I mean, we might have 1 or 2 spots moving forward where we can bomb in there if necessary, but I don't know if I'll ever do it. Because what I've seen is that if you just leave the deer alone and you're in the right place for either feeding or transition, you're going to have the best opportunity anyway, if they feel safe. But the minute you make them feel unsafe, the minute your opportunity is going to decrease for future shots. And so the last weekend, the first day, I sat with a south wind, thought it was going to be awesome. He shows up at my north wind stand. Second night, I sit the north wind stand. What does he show up at 6 o'clock? 6:04, something like that, where like I'm about to pack up my stuff and get out of there as quietly as possible, and I look over my right-hand shoulder and I just see antlers, like the type of antlers you're like, that's not real. Mm-hmm. At 20 yards, and he walks out to like where my shooting lane's here, and he walks out to there, and you're like, you've got to be kidding me. So like I'm pulling on this deer like at 6:04, which before daylight savings is like you don't shoot after 6. And then a pig runs out.
It's illegal. It's just dumb.
Yeah, pretty much.
Big catch.
5:35 was sunset, so 6:05 would be my legal shooting
But you
light.
can see just fine with the spotlight, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Pig runs out, scares him off. Like even if I was going to risk it, like didn't have the opportunity. So that's the second to last night. Last night, I swear, I overthought this. I don't think I slept at all that night. I think I slept less that night than I did the night that I hit him, and we didn't recover him, and we were waiting to go back out there for dogs, or with dogs. I don't think I slept at all because I knew what the wind was going to tell me, and I knew if I hunted the wind, then I wouldn't be in the right place. But we talked about it, and I had my brother-in-laws, I had my father-in-law, I had my dad, and like everybody was speaking their opinion into it. And I was like, he's shown up in this vicinity the last 2 nights. How could you not put your spot in the place that he had been 2 nights in a row? So I just set up in the same spot.
Wrong wind.
Southeast wind was carrying me right to where he came out the night before. He came out over here the night that I shot him. Dancing across a bunch of CRP, like literally just bounding. Like I've got a video of him jumping through this CRP. I'm talking like 10 foot, just junk native grass. Him just jumping through it. The last place I would have told you guys he would have come from. I thought he'd come from this bedding area, and literally there's like an old gate that they walk through. It's crazy. An old cattle gate they walk through.
So you hunting that bad wind actually turned into be the right wind?
It was the exact right wind,
That's
Jake.
crazy.
Yeah. The exact right wind for the exact situation he came through. But you never know. I mean, it's like where you think they're coming from based on cameras does not always mean that that's where they're coming from. Because what I've learned is like deer will swing a lot of the times, especially if it's like if you've either got a feeder or you've got a, some sort of destination, whether it's a scrape or a, licking branch or whether it's a feeder or whatever it is. A lot of times they'll come around, like they'll be coming from this side, but they'll swing all the way around, and so you won't get a picture of them until they come from this side. But in all reality, he came from this side, and so this day, the crazy thing about it was he was, and I think this kind of plays into like the strategy for guys like when they're trying to hunt late season. So this was a mature deer that was wounded in the peak rut. So he was probably less able to breed the does that he wanted to. So to me, he was probably more motivated to breed does at the end of the season. Mm-hmm. So what I saw him doing was he cut across that CRP. He was chasing a yearling that was still in heat because the mature doe that had shown up probably 30 minutes before him, she had cleared out, but that yearling was still hanging around. And what I found is he was on her tail. So she headed north. He was coming towards me down the trail outside the CRP, but instead of coming down the trail, he came up top and basically followed her line perfectly. And so that yearling came down this other cattle trail, and he came chasing right after.
She comes right by you.
Yeah. The problem with that is she was also really attached to her mom. So
what a perv. That deer's such a perv.
so that doe.
She was 18.
Yeah. So that doe almost winded me at least 2 times. Like during this whole session. So like I'm sitting in the tree, southeast wind's blowing me right there. The mature doe's sitting right there. Like as I'm shooting this deer, like the doe's sitting right there, and she's sitting there like jumping me, and I'm like fully drawn on this deer, waiting for him to come down this trail right here where the yearling's already come down, and I'm praying that this doe right here doesn't blow it all up. And she's sitting there stomping, blowing at me, and I'm like, this deer's never going to come to me. Like, at any minute, he's going to go that way. And for whatever reason, he kept coming, and gave me a broadside shot, and I was bang.
How far was he?
35 yards.
What do you mean 35? Did you not range it, or did you just kind of
know
from previous stands?
I had set this stand enough to the point where I had 20, 25, 30, 35, 40 pretty well mapped out. So when he hit 35, I was like, I know exactly what to put him on. Mm-hmm. And I've got a five pin sight, and I put him on 35 and drilled him, and he ran 80 yards.
Less anxiety from the first time you shot him, or the same, different?
Equal or more.
Just as exciting the second time you saw him.
Yeah, equal or more. I think that I was more nervous about the doe bussing me.
You had a problem to solve before he came in front of you.
Exactly. It wasn't even waiting on him and shaking for the weight. It was that, like, she was going to bust me before I even had an opportunity with him.
It was weird because, like, obviously, I was hunting the other side of the farm, And we were texting back and forth. And I've already shot my buck, right? So I'm just out there to kill another doe. And we're just texting back and forth. And next thing you know, he's like, I shot him. And I was like, where did you hit him? And he was like, I don't know.
I blacked out.
Yeah, and I was like, well, did you hit him good? And he was like, I don't know. And I was like, well, did you hit him at all? And he was like, to be honest, I blacked out. I don't remember any of it. And I'm just like, you're not giving me anything, man. Like, so me sitting in the stand, I'm just like, oh my God. Like, is it happening again? Like, what is going on? And he was like, Jake's such a good dude. He's like, just sit in the stand, try to take another doe so you can finish your hunt. And I'm like, bro, I am already out of the tree.
It's the last day of the season.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm literally heading back to the truck. I was like, meet me at the trucks. I was like, we'll just crack a couple beers and just like kill some time. Dude, I'm telling you. He was like, I don't know. I blacked out. I'm like, you're not literally giving me anything going. So when
though. I don't have any memory when the arrow left.
When he met me back at the truck, though, he had the arrow. And so, like, it was a full pass-through. He met me back at the trucks with the arrow, and I was, like, it was covered. And
Perfect blood.
I sent it to, like, 3 or 4 people. And, I've been bow hunting long enough at this point to where I was just kind of like, what are we doing sitting here?
Why are we drinking this beer?
Yeah.
Get this deer.
Honestly, I was just like, we've been here for like an hour. What are we doing sitting here? Like, let's go get this buck. But at the same time, you want to be responsible with it. So Jake had a time in his head that we were going to sit there till
7:30.
And so we sat there till 7:30, and then we got in the side-by-side and went out and started looking.
Walk us through the recovery. What happens from there?
So we get out. I show him where the arrow had landed in the ground, and there's a little blood around the arrow, but there is not a lot of blood. So I immediately, like I told y'all earlier in this podcast, I said the time between the shot and the recovery, that's where I suffer the most.
Every bow hunter does. That's turmoil.
It's like you think everything, and it's like, I blew it again, or I just shot the deer of my life. And so when we get up to the arrow side, I'm like, start second guessing myself. And like, you got a pressure of a buddy. So I'm like, yeah, there should be blood here. Should be a lot of blood. Like, based on the arrow, this is like good. There was like lung indication. Like, there was like little bubbles. There was bright red blood, so that usually tells you, heart and lung. So I'm like, all of this makes sense for it to be a quick, easy recovery. We follow the trail in which he ran, and there is no blood. So I'm like, you've got to.
Your heart drop?
Yeah, for sure. And he's like, he said the words first. Like, I was silent. He can tell you, like, I don't think I said anything when I got back to the truck. I was still in that moment of like, I still can't, I hope I got him, but like, I can't commit to it yet. And so when he comes out there, I remember him saying something along the lines of like, there's no blood. And so he cuts across the CRP and just literally starts randomly walking.
No, so there's a creek down there, and how deer, this is what they always say, and this is what I've experienced is, deer, when they're not hit well, will go to water to die. And so I was like, okay, well, there's a creek over there. So I'm just going to walk towards the creek because like maybe he just went to the creek to die. So that's what I was doing. I was walking across all of this giant 10-foot tall crap to just walk. You basically make a beeline to the water and just start searching the water's edge.
Which to me, if you've got a buddy you trust, basically told me, we lost this deer. There's not enough blood to prove that you fatally killed this deer.
So what are you thinking? Where do you think you hit that deer? Because your arrow looked good, but yet not a lot of blood. So what's going through your mind on?
Honestly, I'm just like, I'm freaking out. I'm like, I don't know if I hit him. I don't know. If you get that good of blood, but then there's no trail, I mean, you obviously didn't hit heart, because heart's going to bleed all over the place.
Well, it's not a good sign when you're 5 minutes in and your buddy's grid searching for
Yeah.
a 200-inch deer. You're like, nice, here we are again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at. I'm like devastated because I'm like, he's already chosen to go off grid and to just go like walking paths. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so obviously don't voice any of that. I think that's the first time I've said it out loud. But the minute you decided to go toward the creek, I thought it was over.
I honestly thought I was going to walk down there and find that buck laying in the creek, though. Because the arrow said he was dead. You know what I mean?
But
Like
that's coming from the non-shooter.
Yeah. But, like, looking at the arrow, like, in my mind, I'm like, well, he's dead.
Let's
He's
go get him. Let's not mess with this trail.
He's just dead somewhere. So I was just kind of like, okay. Well, like, we're going to find this buck dead, but there's no blood. So, like, I'm just going to go search by the creek because, like, I found my buck by the creek that season. I found multiple bucks that I've shot by the creek or by a pond or whatever. Like, they just love water when they're just suffering. So I'm like, I'm just going to go down by the water. I'm sure he's just going to be laying there. That's what was going through my mind.
Not what was going through my mind. I'm like, I missed him again. I'm retiring forever. I'm never touching a bow again. And so I continue down the trail that I think he was running down after because the nice part about it is when I released the arrow, I blacked out for when it like hit, but I saw him run off to the point where I marked like 2 or 3 good solid landmarks to where I could, retrace. And I went down there to where the last second where I saw him, and I looked to my right, and I walked down a fence line about 5 yards, and he was laying right there. Like 10 yards off the trail that I saw him last. And I was like, I immediately, besides when Johnny said yes to my marriage proposal.
Hey, I don't think he can hear you right now, so be honest.
The
Best moment of my life.
There is no other yes that means more because you're just like, oh, it's going to be all right. Like, we did it. We did it. And just getting to hold him, I was like, holy crap.
Well, I remember Jake.
Oh, yeah.
I want to see it. Get it on the camera finally. So you
I'm gonna
said
try to
holding him.
Sneak it. That's what we're going to do.
Gymnastics. So you put your hands on that for the first time.
Yeah, I think when he was on the ground for the first time, like I had seen so many pictures of him and I had seen all these little kickers in every direction. I was just like, it didn't really feel real until I had walked up on him and I grabbed his antlers and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. He actually died. And then I just yelled at him.
So I'm like in all this just tall, giant crap, dude. I'm telling you, just because I told you how thick it was, just like this sucks. You know what I mean? Just going through there trying to go towards this creek, and all of a sudden you hear, I've got him. I found him. And so I'm like, holy crap, he found this deer. Mm-hmm. And so, I was like, this moment's about to be epic. So I just, as I'm sprinting through all this stuff through him, I'm like pulling up my camera and start videoing.
The best video.
And so I'm like,
gotten.
I've got this video going. But then when I get to him and I see him holding this deer, I just full blown tackle him, bro. There's nothing else you can do. I just like tackled him. And so obviously we celebrated it for a while. And it was just like probably half an hour of me just sitting there watching Jake just enjoy this deer and enjoy this reward of his hard work and FaceTime his family and FaceTime his wife. And, I don't know that I've ever experienced so much joy watching someone else kill a deer, right? It was almost like I did it because sharing the pictures, sharing the conversation, sharing the tactic of how he was going to do it, which stand he was going to pick based on the wind. I mean, all of it, right? It was like I had been there through every step of it, and to watch this, this book finally close and this sense of completeness for Jake was just kind of like, it was incredible. It was so awesome to watch.
Well, that moment would have been really meaningful alone, but obviously we talked about it earlier, deer hunting, it's like one of the best things it does is the people it brings into your life and the people it keeps in your life. So I bet it was 10 times sweeter just to share it with someone else, especially a lifelong buddy. That's a big deal.
You can't draw it up the way that we drew it up.
Yeah, it was
And a
cool.
buzzer beater.
Yeah.
Yeah, that ain't
It was super cool because, like, you know, like, obviously he calls his parents, his mom and dad come out, but just, like, having that thing hung up, and he was, like, so gracious enough to let me cape him out for him. So, like, I know he trusted
trust.
me.
You ain't
That is
touching that.
very much trust. So, like, having that deer hung up and just, like, us, like me, him, his dad, his mom, just standing around that buck as we're just, like, skinning him out and caping him out was just, like, I don't know that I've ever experienced that much joy out of a buck that I personally have killed, right? Like, it was pretty incredible.
Yeah, and I think that the fact that he and I had talked about it for a long time, where it was like, hey, we're going to kill deer, we're going to hang them in the barn, and we're going to process them in the barn, and we're going to, like, put them in the ice chest in the barn, and we're going to, like, that part, I'm just like, man, like, that's what we've always dreamed of, is doing that kind of stuff with our families. And then, you know, mom and dad getting to drive out. It was like probably 9 o'clock at night, but then getting to show up and getting to, my mom didn't know what she was, like, handling
She's like,
here.
cool.
Yeah, nice.
Super cool.
But I'm like, you don't realize that, like, I didn't know these existed 20 minutes from where I grew up.
This is a dinosaur that you're holding right now, Mom.
Yeah, it really is. I don't know if I'll ever see something like this again. I hope and pray I do. Hope and pray that I get to grow deer like this for a lot of buddies to enjoy as well. But
Not Jake. He only hunts public.
Yeah, that's right.
I specified. We'll talk about this. I specified.
I've seen a lot of bucks. I've seen a lot of world class bucks just at taxidermists and stuff. That is one of the most unique looking deer I've ever seen. He has a character all of his own.
yeah, and he survived a lot, and then he died on a really, really, really cool day.
Yeah, it's pretty legit.
Did you think when you guys got this place, we're gonna drop 500 inches of bone from 3 deer on year 1?
There is nothing in me that could tell you that I expected anything that happened this year. Not a chance.
Yeah, it was just like a really wild thing, like just from the start. I mean, honestly, when you think about the progression of it and setting up cameras and looking at pictures, and like the first pictures we got of bucks, you're just like, okay, like cool, like there's deer. That'll be fun, right? And then like as the season starts to progress, you're like, holy crap, like there's a 130-inch 8-point, and then you're like, holy crap, there's a 140-inch 8-point. And then you start seeing some of these deer, and you're like, Jesus, like we might be able to kill like 150, 160-inch deer out here. And so then when you see this for the first time, and then, you know, because to me, we had gotten a picture of it the day he shot it the first time, but it still looked like a giant typical 8. So like we talked about earlier in the podcast, somebody can tell you they saw a giant deer, and you're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, how big, buddy?
Right, like, sure.
If you look at it just like that,
Yeah,
It's a giant 8-point.
Yeah, so like all this stuff right here is
Was
hidden.
line. Yeah.
This is hidden. So it just looks like a big 8, right? And so I was just like, okay. Like, yeah.
and he turns and you're like, oh.
Correct. And so it was just like this weird progression of a season where it was just like, it just got better and better and better as far as like deer quality goes. And you're kind of like, okay, well, we just need to be in the right spot or right place at the right time kind of thing. And then you come out and you shoot a 142 inch. Then I shot a 142 inch, and Jake had already put an arrow in this thing, which I thought was just a 150 inch 8-point. And then, but you know, we had gotten pictures of it at that point. And so we're like, it's a giant. Like I said, if it's over 130 inches, it's just a mammoth at that point to me. And so, yeah, it was just like a wild progression of the season. It was like it just kept getting better and better and better. You know, like God immensely blessed us. And, you know, I think that Jake is a testament to hard work and patience paying off, and not just shooting the first thing you see because it would be fun or it would be rewarding. It's kind of like there's potentially something better waiting on the other side if you're willing to take that risk and put in that time.
One of the things that's been revolutionary for me is thinking that God can use something that you love the most to glorify him the most. So you have so much passion for land management and for deer hunting, and he can use even something as trivial and as silly as wanting to put an arrow through an animal for his glory. And that buck is just going to be a way for, more people to come to know him. It's awesome. It's awesome. And a reason to fellowship. It's always nice to fellowship when you have a 200-inch deer to chase.
That's right.
It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt one bit. That's awesome. I hope you have another one next year to chase.
Amen to that.
Who knows?
Funky.
There you go. Yeah. Well, this has been fun.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting us do it at your house. Hopefully we didn't keep your baby girl up for very long. She maybe got a noise machine or something.
She's fast asleep.
There we go. Well, so where can people keep up with you guys and your season? Where's the best place for them to go if they want to hear more stories like this?
Before we do that, I know we've been dragging this one out, but since we got you two here, what we did normally in the podcast with our guests, what we do is what's that one encounter that still haunts you to this day, whether that be a shot opportunity or just a straight up blown encounter? Basically, what's your close but no cigar? Micah, we'll let you go first.
Okay.
East Texas doe.
East Texas doe. I don't really know that I've had any that stick out in my mind because
Stone Cold Killer. Understand?
No. It's not even that. It's I haven't had any big enough to be like, oh god, I wish I would have killed that thing. I've obviously missed deer before. I've missed some bucks before. I guess my biggest one would be this season in Missouri. It's expensive to buy an out of state tag. It can be somewhat. Do I need to stop or no?
Stop right there.
Okay.
That was a good catch.
I don't know where it died. When did it die?
I'm about to find out. Of course, that was dead too. I love it.
Yeah, I screwed up the ending, I guess.
Let me see. We're going to have to wrap this up quick.
One of them has 4%.
4? This 3%?
Well,
God, what we got behind
that one
this?
should be 33%.
This one should?
I think so. 33 or 44.
Hope you guys do better at tack. I wouldn't say that I've had any crazy ones that I don't know that really stick out, but this year kind of sucked. Taking a full week off of vacation, driving up to Missouri. It's expensive to buy an out of state tag, and then going to Missouri and not capitalizing a couple of times. I missed a doe and I missed a buck. It wasn't a really big buck, but it's more so the fact knowing that here in Texas, I have nice deer waiting on me, but I went away and not being able to capitalize while I'm away. I missed a doe, I missed a buck. So yeah, that one really sucked because that buck was at 35 yards, and I'm not trying to sound like I'm Mr. Dudley or anything, but I am. But I am. Yeah, but 35 yards is not a hard shot for me, and so to miss one at 35, him just jumping the string and ducking it, kind of was like a punch in the gut. Even though he was a 110-inch 8-point or something like that.
Don't discriminate.
Yeah, but that was probably the hardest one for me, where I was just do I suck at bow hunting? Should I buy a gun or just
cross
trade this
gun
thing in or a cross gun? Yeah, absolutely. But that was the hardest one for sure.
Jake, do you got one that comes to mind? 200-inch deer killer.
Man, it would help if I had a scapular with an arrow in it to help me identify the wish I would have. Yeah, that's it. You play a lot of shots in your mind, and I think that the story I tell about this guy is that he's even bigger than what you see right now because of that, front G1 that broke off between the time that I shot him and then I harvested him. And so I think that it's still so sweet, but I think he's, between 8 to 10 inches is what is still in the wilderness somewhere. Mm-hmm. So heavier arrow, better placement, better timing. There's lots of stuff that I think through, but I'm just thankful that we were able to get him down by the end of the year. But if I had regret one shot, I would probably take it again, but maybe with one more step forward.
Yeah. It's it's easy to say I regret that when you got them in your hands. That's that's awesome though.
Makes the story just a little bit cooler.
That's a sweet story. Yeah. So where can people keep up with you guys?
I keep everything on my Jake Schumann Instagram page.
Are you guys still running that Butt Buddy Outdoors page that you guys had?
Yeah,
That's their OnlyFans.
Yeah, that's hashtag OnlyFans, @OnlyFans. I really don't know what I'm talking about, but.
What about you, Micah?
So you can find me on my Instagram. It's @livinglike_RK. I mean, it's everything from bass fishing to bow hunting to dog training. It's a little bit of everything. Pretty much, I have way too many hobbies in the outdoors, and they go year round. So if you follow me, it's pretty much that. Just a bunch of crap. Me being outside, killing a bunch of animals.
Heck yeah.
See your face again here in about a month at TAG.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Whoop that booty. Another year.
We'll see, dude. Like I said.
Honestly, I've been thinking about that, and I really would like to play cash, most of them. You know what I mean? So that
you had a good year. Okay. Well, I owe taxes. You're trying to take my money away.
The only game that we played cash at last year, Jake won. So, it could work in his favor.
Anything. I'm just saying.
It could work in his favor. So we'll see. But apparently, we're going to be shooting with some shooters this year. So we'll see.